entertaining you with Riverlands 5A. Stay here with us, the party has just begun.
Welcome to NAT Chat. Today's topic is all about human rights. With us we have Dr. Julie Morcillo. She has been with us before, and thank you for being with us today. But apart from being a community psychologist, you have worked in Victoria an Equal Opportunity Commission.
Yes.
And also in equal opportunity employment, isn't it? During the 90s. So you know all about human rights and equal opportunity. And let's start how human rights came to be.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, human rights came about, human rights has been around for a long time. The United Nations Declaration of Human Rights,
yes.
Where a lot of many countries in the world, a majority of countries in the world are signatories, came about at a convention just after the major war at the Nazi era. And people said this must never happen again, the Holocaust with Nazi Germany. Where so many people were killed, and it wasn't just Jews as some people think, it was actually also people with disabilities, people with different sexual orientations, people with that were different and that weren't blue eyes and blonde hair, didn't cut it. And so people decided, no, this must never happen again. So nations from all around the world came together to sign a declaration that says we must never let this happen again. But they wrote it in positive terms, which I really liked, that people should be free to have dignity and respect.
But took the Second World War to really put the whole world into its knees to say, okay, we need that.
Yes.
Some sort of an agreement into this declaration. And is it the Western countries that they participated mainly on that, or the other countries as well?
Oh, a lot of other countries as well, not just the Western. I think the main push was from the Western world.
Yes.
And America sees themselves as one of the main instigators, and the English.
Yes.
But it really was based in Switzerland because that was a neutral country. And so United Nations now is based in Geneva in Switzerland.
Now, since 1948, we are in 2014 at the moment. Quite a few decades.
Yes, yes.
Have we done anything right in relation to that? And where are we at?
Yes, because a lot of countries then went on to say, well, let's put it into more detail about what we need to make sure people do or are all treated with dignity and respect. And so they developed a whole lot of covenants, a whole lot of declarations, a whole lot of international, a whole lot of laws that they would hope would become more or less international. And a lot of them could come under the civic and political, and the Americans are really good on that because that's on about freedom of speech. But there's also economic, social, and what's the other one? Economic, social, and cultural. Yes. And that's about the right to work, the right for social security, the right for education, health.
But not all the countries, they really cover everything, isn't it?
Well, no, not as well as I think they do.
Okay.
No.
We claim we want to be champions in human rights, but we are not.
Yes.
Even in Australia.
Yes.
Isn't it? We have detention centres and everything. But
we've made a lot of gains.
Yes.
But not.
We still have a long way to go. Now, human rights, because I've read the definition and some elements into it, it is about dignity, isn't it?
Yes.
You want to touch upon that?
Yeah, I really
What do we mean by that?
Yeah, I think one of the things they talk about with the Declaration of Human Rights, it's about protecting the dignity of people and about promoting their dignity and respect, and that we all have a right to freedom of expression, to education, to health care, to be treated, to be able to work, to be able to have leisure time, to have freedom of speech. And however, that doesn't always come about as we would hope.
There's another thing that I've read in definition that says we have the right not to fear.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes.
And I liked it the way it was expressed there.
I like the way you've said that, because that summarises a lot of things. Often we live in fear, and which is what ends up with war and anger and fear and war and shame and everything, and then you end up with terrible things happening. So the opposite of that is, well, let's behave in love and compassion and dignity and respect and promote that, because everyone has a little fear of the other. We all it's easier to get on with people that are same as us, or our immediate family. Well, not always easy for everyone, but easier to have people that are similar to you. It's working out how to get on with people that are different and appreciating diversity, not just tolerating it, but appreciating it. And I think over the years, Australia has done that so well, so often. Not all the time, but very often. We like to celebrate diversity at our best.
But it is quite a big challenge, though, to go as an individual beyond myself and my family.
Yes.
And accept the freedom of somebody else who is completely stranger, isn't it?
Yes, and I think we have it is really hard, but I think we have a good history of that in Australia. Well, we treated Indigenous people terribly, but and that is bad. But we have then sometimes tried to reach out to them and to reach out to each new people that come. And I think our Christian tradition has really helped with that, in that the Christian church has really promoted community services, and they started schools often, and they started the healthcare often, and they started saying, hey, we better start treating these Indigenous people a bit better. So I think they promoted that, and then really promoted that the laws strengthen those rights. And I think too, not just the Christian churches, the unions, Christian and non-Christian, really promoted it too. And I wonder if that comes from our convict heritage.
I think so. The story of Australia, at least, says that. Yeah. It's that equality, and the unions were quite strong in the previous century, so they did promote the equal opportunity and in employment, in
minimal
financial
wage.
rewards. Exactly. We'll come back with some more challenges in relation to human rights. We will be back shortly to continue this conversation.
Welcome to MELfeed.video. We are commencing a live web stream service via youtube.com from Echuca, Australia. We currently conduct these streams on Monday evenings, with other times to be added as more opportunities arise. Please visit our website MELfeed.video for further information. This web video project presents old and new community TV programs. Please enjoy your stay with MELfeed.video. Transports of Distant Delight is a mixed selection of transportation pictures from here and there and almost everywhere, but not quite. Some quirky, some mundane, some from the past, perhaps reflecting a transit system that has vanished into history, and some from thriving transport entities that continue to endure despite the constant pressures from the all-pervasive motorcar. Enjoy.
Joy, well-being, community, inclusion.
Special Olympics is a global movement for people with an intellectual disability, creating a world of inclusion and community through sport, where every person is accepted and welcomed, regardless of ability. One athlete, one volunteer, one family member at a time, helping to make the world a better place. Join the inclusion revolution by supporting Special Olympics.
And choose to include.
Welcome back with Dr. Julie Morsillo in the topic for human rights. It is challenging sometimes within even the Western civilization, Western countries, to balance or to agree in human rights the way we exercise them.
Yeah, and I've noticed that some of us Western countries seem to think that we're doing really well, and America like to promote that they're very good on human rights, and in some areas they are very good, very big on freedom of expression and trying to promote the dignity of people at their best. But it was interesting, one time I was, the first time I went to Italy actually, with my husband to see his heritage, because his family originally came from there, and I was very eager to see. Anyway, I was very interested. We were travelling with a lot of Americans and only a few other Australians, majority Americans, and the tour guide very proudly at one point when we got to this big beautiful hospital very proudly announced that we have free healthcare and everyone can use this hospital and they don't have to pay. Okay. Well, some of the Americans were horrified, not in a good way, in a bad way, and us Australians are going, oh yeah, free healthcare, yeah, well, we've got that, and the Americans are going, what? Even for those that don't work hard, they would get to come in there for free? And they couldn't believe it, because they don't have free healthcare only if you've got a job, and sometimes it's attached to your job, but they don't get it. And they some of them couldn't see the good in that, which I thought was very surprising. But then later on in the trip was interesting. They said, oh, and how long are you over here? And because the tour lasted 10 days. And most of them, the Americans go, oh, we have to hightail it back to America, because the most holidays most of us get is 2 weeks holidays a year, some 3 if we're very lucky. And us Australians go, oh no, we're here for 6 weeks, because we get 4 weeks holiday a year, plus we saved up some of our long service leave or saved up holidays from the year before. So we have better health, workers' rights too, and we have minimum wage. They don't even have minimum wage. So
but the freedom has a different definition, isn't it? In your example in America, if you can afford, then you can have education or you can have health, isn't it? In some other countries, really, it's not a matter of affordability, but it is a matter of equal rights. For example, here in Australia, when you hit 65 or now 67, you are entitled for a pension, unless really you're very financial sort of good enough. So otherwise, you're going to have it irrespective if you worked or not.
Yes, and you're entitled to a disability pension if you have struggled to work, or if you're out of a job, you're entitled very quickly, well, that may change, but at the moment, very, very quickly to get some sort of support, some sort of welfare to carry you over, so you can still feed your children and put a roof over the head of the family. Whereas America doesn't have that.
That means even in Japan, is more strict, much less holidays as we do. But by the sounds of it, the philosophy of it is freedom is the basic, the freedom of our dignity, as we mentioned before, is the main principle behind the human rights, irrespective to the local rules for employment and for education.
And if you treat people with dignity, they actually produce more and do better.
Absolutely.
I remember when I was working at the Equal Opportunity Commission in Victoria in the 90s with Jeff Kennett, with our Premier at the time, and he was saying, oh, we've got to cut back on the lunchtime, we've got to cut back on morning tea and afternoon tea. But actually, if you give people more breaks and treat them with dignity, they actually work better during the time that they're working.
And this is the positive force, the positive reinforcement of human rights. But unfortunately, at the moment, we're still dealing with wars and dealing with a very, very awkward situations around the world, and the international organizations, they really have to really force peace amongst the people to accept each other. And nowadays, with universities we've got and the wisdom, we should not be in that position. What do you think is the problem? Is this the politicians or the business?
I think it's often comes down to a question of power.
Okay.
If people use their power or abuse their power, or then that's when you end up in trouble. So at the moment, the powerful are making sure they get more and more money, and the not so powerful get less and less. And the more more difference there is in and people aren't equal, and that things aren't equitable, and you have some people in poverty, that's where you end up in war. And so war isn't about, oh, I just don't like this person because of their colour eyes. War is about people being in despair because they're in abject poverty and they're not being helped out of that poverty. And the powerful, sometimes power ultimately corrupts, and that's where you end up with this inequity, and then you end up with wars and problems.
And even now we can see that even in our country here in Australia, we can see that distance between the poor and the rich widens up,
yes.
isn't it? Becomes bigger.
A report that just came out that one of my mentors, actually Dr. David Morovitz, he's a psychologist and an economist, he helped write it, and with a few other very talented scientists as well. But they come up with that the inequality in Australia is actually increasing. So the richer are becoming richer and the poorer are becoming poorer. Whereas if we were truly living out our human rights declaration and building things the way we should be, that should be coming less, so that people who haven't got so much money are lifted up, and those that have got it share it more and pay all their taxes, so that we get more equity.
And that is quite a challenge, because we can see that if that inequality keeps going the way it does, that will endanger the human rights declaration in itself within the country, isn't it?
Yes.
So depends how strong are going to be the people later on to sort of drive towards human rights, isn't it?
Yes.
Quite a few challenges with human rights. We'll be back shortly after the break. We'll be back after the break. Stay with us.
My name is Logan. I'm 12 years old and I have Duchenne muscular dystrophy. My muscles are degenerating and I was put into a wheelchair 2 years ago. Soon I won't be able to move at all. The majority of people affected will not live past their 20s, including me. So we need your support to improve our quality of life until a cure is found.
Welcome back to our program. We continue the discussion on human rights. It is very challenging today, thinking we live in a very competitive society. Does this help the human rights, or we are too competitive, or
I think too competitive. A little bit of competition gets people moving, gets people working, but too much leads to too much inequality, whereas cooperation is the way to go. In fact, some studies looking at the happiness factor about people's well-being, people that are healthy physically and emotionally, have come up with really interesting statistics. And interestingly enough, the people who are the happiest aren't necessarily the richest at all. In fact, when they looked at whole communities, there was two really interesting ones. One was in a very poor country. People didn't have much money at all, but they came up with really good well-being. And it turned out they grew a lot of their own food that was very, very healthy, and they all shared it. So it's people being at the same level and not having competition with the Joneses next door, but actually sharing. Or you hear of African children saying, oh, if you were to win a prize of this bowl of fruit, wouldn't that be great? And they go, what do you mean? We'd share it with the other kids anyway. So it's about sharing. And there's another interesting one in this same study as that first town that I talked about in a poorer country. It was in America, and this small town in America came out as one of the happiest, but it wasn't the richest. It was a town where nearly everyone had come from Italy. They'd come out together and they celebrated everything together. So they didn't have high, necessarily a lot of money. They just were on average wage, but they were all on similar wages when they came out. And they had celebrations they celebrated together, their Christian tradition of, the Virgin Mary celebrations or whatever, and martial arts, and talking around the piazza and talking and going to each other's homes for hospitality. This went on for decades. They kept coming up the best. It was a longitudinal study. They kept coming up the best until very recently, and they dropped. Do you know what they dropped?
Why?
Not because because anything went terribly wrong in the community. In fact, interestingly enough, for decades, some of them were getting higher wages, but they just put it in the bank. They didn't show it off. So the houses seemed the same, seemed very middle class. Even though some were going into upper class, they acted still middle class. So the people stayed happy, they were all the same. The difference came when some of the young ones moved away, got a higher education, came back and flaunted their wealth. That's when the change came. But when everyone cooperated, great.
That means intentionally we need that cooperation, not just on the surface, isn't it?
Yes, community-minded and appreciating community together and celebrating community together without flaunting that I've got more than you.
That means if you take that intentional cooperation out, if the intention is not there, it hurts really the community, isn't it?
Yes.
And in Australia, we do have a lot of challenges, and we're talking about corporations. How can we say that when we have the asylum seekers and the children in detention centre? We have women in crisis in the society, which is quite a bit. We have recently with the statistics, especially with the newspapers, we don't do very, very well as a society supporting those in marginalised. Even those in that have nowhere to stay and they're homeless.
Yes.
And recently Salvation Army really brought that up as quite a big problem as well.
Yeah.
And how we travel as Australia?
Well, first, I think we've come a long way, and we've done some very, very good things. But sadly, the inequality is growing, as I said before. And sadly, the latest statistic is showing that 85 people, or 85 nuclear families, or whatever it is, 85 families in the world, the richest ones, own as much as half of the poorest part of the population. That is a terrible statistic. And someone was telling me the other day, this couple that were fighting over their trillions, over their billions, not just millions, billions. And you go, that doesn't make sense. Why aren't they sharing it? And then one of the richest people in Australia came out with something weird recently that said, I don't think we need to pay people very much. $7 an hour would be enough. And you think, what? She's got a millions, yet she can suggest that. It doesn't seem right. And then as far as the way we treat each other, look, we've come a long way.
Yes.
But we've still got a long way to go.
Despite we do have a parliament, upper house, lower house, we do have the means to bring and change the laws. We still see how difficult it is to say, yes, this is an obvious problem, but we still cannot solve it. I'm not sure. Then we'll come back to the argument. We have to be intentional.
Yes.
Cooperating and working together.
Yes.
With asylum seekers when they come in, with different groups, marginalised groups, so they can be empowered. Come into the human rights, isn't it?
And we do have a good history of that in Australia. That mateship concept is very, very much about caring for each other and looking after each other. And we're very good with our friends and our nuclear families. Now we have to learn to be good with the stranger, with the other. As Jesus taught us, and a lot of religions teach us, we are to be compassionate to those that are different and not just tolerate but celebrate their differences and show compassion when they are in need. And to me, the biggest stranger at the moment is asylum seekers. We need to reach out to them.
And actually, it is, you said a phrase before which I like in relation to the asylum seekers. They are most in need and most marginalised at the same time.
Yes.
It doesn't match, isn't it?
Yeah.
And they are the most in need at the moment.
Yes.
And something that shocked me this week, if I can... this week, this is only from the 3rd of December 14, United Nations Food Agency cuts aid to 1.7 million refugees because we don't have enough money, and the money that they need to feed these people and to take care of them is really nothing compared to the budget we have in Australia.
Yep. And we do have a history of giving to aid, and individuals do as well as the government, but unfortunately it's not enough, and we're not going up in proportion to the amount of money that we earn.
Yes, that's right. It's a very difficult topic. What would be the most prominent step that we should take today?
to
towards
change?
to improve?
Well, we can be much more generous nation. We survived the global recession better than any other country in the world. Our treasurer year before last got an award for one of the best in the world, and because we kept up employment and did all that big schools program and things like that, and so we should now be the generous ones that give more generously, not pulling back. So give generously to those in need overseas, asylums overseas. Give generously to the asylum seekers here. And countries are showing us how to do it, like Norway, Finland. Why don't we copy them? We copy them in some things. Why don't we copy them in
We
this?
did come with intentional cooperation and giving.
Yes.
Dr. Julie, thank you for being with us today.
Thank
in
you.
this topic of human rights. Thanks for staying with us. We're going to see you again next week with another topic.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Welcome viewers, thank you for tuning in to Migration Stories, produced by Northern Access TV for our chat series NAT Chat. And today my guest is Gil Santos, who migrated here from Timor quite a while ago.
Yes.
Thanks for coming in today.
My pleasure, Richard.
Well, we're going to talk about your time in Timor and, you know, your hopes for the future, but we'll start with your current work and activities here in Melbourne. But Gil, you're actually quite well known in a certain circle of people who love, you know, music and political causes with the band that you formed and led, the Dili All Stars.
Yes.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Now, a few years ago, you were quite prominent in the media doing stories and that.
Yes.
What was that about?
Well, I was growing up as a political activist in the past, and also a musician. And being musician and political activist, music is the right tools to promote the cause. I was in the music more about promoting the cause of East Timor cause at the time before independence. And so that's how I was very involved with the media, and I also more like a lobbyist at the time.
Because at that time, that was like fighting for independence?
Yes.
That was just before there was independence?
No, that was before independence.
Yes, okay.
During the struggle for the independence. So,
well, you know, we'd have to say that music does point to issues and does focus. And, you know, do you think that you've had a small part to play in achieving independence for East Timor?
Well, when we first came to Australia in 1985, we migrated from Portugal, where I left Timor in 1982.
I see.
I was only 12 years old, and my father was killed, and all my uncles got killed, and my mother at the time left Timor in 1979 during the height of the Cold War. She has to go through Soviet Union at the time.
Soviet Union?
Yeah, and then she ended up in Portugal, and then 3 years later she got us out of Timor.
Yes.
And then 3 years later, 1985, we decided to come to Australia. So, and
all right.
I think it was one of the best choice that my mother did. And then in Australia, growing up here, went to school, and all of a sudden identity, the need of having identity in the community was very important to us, and that's how I got involved with political activism very early years. Got involved with the unions and other musicians, and then I met Paul Stewart, was one of rock star at the time, playing for Painters and Rockers.
One of our local legends here in Melbourne in Australia.
Yes.
Paul Stewart, fabulous.
Yes, and because one of his brother who got killed.
Tragically, his brother Andy was one of the 3 journalists.
5.
One of the 5 journalists, excuse me, who were killed.
Yes.
During wartime activities there in East Timor.
During the invasion.
Wow.
Yes, and then we went in 1990, in mid-80s. I used to go out, watch them all the time. And, because they were the band that...
They were the big band at that time, weren't they? Yeah.
Yes, and they promoted a lot of Timor situation at the time where nobody knew where Timor was.
Paul Stewart, he's a great person.
Yes.
A great journalist.
Yes.
Great musician, but he's a real Melbourne kind of guy, hey?
Yes.
And he would have been so passionate about the everything East Timorese cause, with his own brother being amongst the loss there. But, you know, you've lost your family members too. I'm so sorry about that.
It's okay. And he was practically was a driving force.
I see.
You know, he took in 1992 when Shanana Guzman got captured, and then we teamed up. We did a recording of
Liberation, the song.
No, not Liberati. Liberati came later.
Okay then.
Yeah, and that was We Can't Be Beaten from Andy Angerson.
We Can't Be Beaten.
Yes.
Oh wow!
In Teton version.
That.
So yeah, and things started rolling from there until before the referendum, when we decided to set up Dilo All Stars.
Okay.
Paulie and I, and we formed the Dilo All Stars with members of Painters and Rockers, and also members of Timorese community musicians.
Yes.
And we went from there.
And for many years, you were one of the prime bands to book for many events, not just political, but also entertainment.
And yeah, from there our aim was, when Dilo Stars went on for another 12 years, touring, playing everywhere, tour around the world.
Yes,
and,
wonderful.
Yeah, been to Timor a lot of times, and every time we came back, they always had demand. And when we played, we thought that this is it for us. When we played on Independence Day in East Timor 2001.
Indeed.
And but then there's other issues also came up and forced the band to continue on touring and playing.
Well, Gil, we'll find out more about that part of the story after the break, but now we have to go to a break. So please do stick around, and we'll be back after these messages.
If you choose to drink then drive,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's,
your family's,
or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
I was in my 40s when I was first diagnosed with bowel cancer. George, my son, was 6 years old at that time. These days, like people of his age, he's very busy, but he still needs to find the time to get to know his bowel cancer risk. Is that right, George?
Yes, Dad. Bowel cancer affects 1 in 12 Australians, young and old, and is our second biggest cancer killer. But if caught early, bowel cancer is treatable and beatable. My dad is living proof of that. So get to know your bowel cancer risk. Talk to your pharmacist or GP about screening. Protect yourself and the ones you love. Go to lovemyfamily.org.au.
1 in 5 of us are affected.
10% of us will have at least one.
And the numbers double for Indigenous Australians.
Just as quick as a click of your fingers, it can happen to anyone at any time.
What would you do if someone close to you was having a seizure?
Imagine if it was your child.
My brother has it. My sister has it.
I have it.
I have it too.
You're not alone.
You're not different.
And you have a bright future ahead of you.
So click for kids.
I'm Amy Lee, and I'm part of it.
Welcome back to Migration Stories. We're here with Gil Santos, born in East Timor, but you migrated here from Portugal.
Yes.
Tell us that story.
Yes, we left Timor as refugees because Timor was at war at the time, and but for us to come to Australia, the Australian government at the time didn't recognize there's always a conflict in Timor, so they always trying to play down as much as they can. And for us to come here, we had to come in as a Portuguese migrants.
Right.
And so that's why we had to go to Portugal and then come to Australia.
And this was organised by...
We went
you were, what, 10 years old or something?
Yes, I left Timor when I was 12. And when my mother got us out from Timor through Red Cross.
Yes, I see.
Yeah, so...
they do great work, the Red Cross, hey? They're really there at the fiery points.
Yes.
And your mother was one of the...
Yes, there's 8 of us.
Yes.
And when my father got killed...
You lost your father.
And my younger sister was only a baby, and my older sister was only 12 years old.
Wow.
And then we decided to come to Australia.
Yes.
And my mother, which is a very strong woman, I admire the most. And she, gave us educations. Most of us ended up, finished at schools and went on to universities. And she's a very strong woman.
Yes. Well, thank goodness for that. Otherwise, we probably wouldn't have you in our country.
Yes.
And she did the research to think about Australia. What do you think were some of the things that she was valuing?
Was very hard for her to come to Australia. When we got here, as typical migrants, which is no money, no nothing, and basically just the clothes on your back.
Wow.
And it was really hard for her in the beginning because of the language issues. And
this was late 70s or early 80s?
85.
Yes.
And but for us it was something really good.
Yes.
I mean, because it's a young kid and we easy to adapt, and in Melbourne, for example, the communities here are very friendly and was really great, for us.
Wow.
So and
that's good to hear,
yeah.
and you blossomed really as a person, and then you were able to take on more responsibilities in that music project with the Dilly All Stars to do all that.
And
but your mother must have been, an amazing person.
Yes.
And inspired, and maybe a bit angry.
Oh, it was really hard because my father disappeared during the war, and we never knew that. Was the hardest part for me is watching my mother grieving for such a long time, and that's the hardest part. And then when we overcome this situation, and the only thing is we had to do our best to prevent more sufferings back home. So that's how I became a political activist.
Yes.
Not only me, all my brothers and sisters. And I got so involved with Timorese cause at the time, so which is driving us to be who we are today.
Well, I'm glad that Australia or Melbourne gave you an environment to do that work.
Yes.
It's reassuring to hear that. What's the situation in Timor now? I mean,
now I visited Timor a couple of times, and the situation, looking can only get better
Yes.
after the independence. It's nothing worse than prior to the independence. But there's a lot of issues and that the country need to tackle, like corruptions or But
corruption is everywhere. It seems.
Yeah, or mismanagement and government. And but other than that, I think we are going through a right direction at this point in time. And yes, we have a bit of hiccups during the process of independence. Like I always tell people, fighting and the struggle is a lot easier than when you're trying to democratize a country. Where our culture is, I see democracy is based on a European thing, but for the Timorese, where the community is more important, or the family is more important than yourself.
Yeah.
Having a democracy is quite a challenge.
Yeah, absolutely. When it's all being built at that time. So, have you been to the house of Jose Ramos Horta?
Yes.
What's it like hanging out at a president's house? I mean, what do you do?
Wow, he invited me twice with Paul Stewart, and before he got shot and after he got shot, and during 2006 crisis.
Yes.
And yes, because at the time when Jose Ramos Horta used to come to Melbourne, and we used to really do a lot of work at the time with him.
Because he's quite a profile figure, isn't he?
Yes, and he's always been very close to my family.
Oh.
And obviously every time we rock up in Timor, and he always invite me and Paul.
So East Timor has one main capital city, yeah?
Yes, which is Dili.
Dili, and the rest is kind of what? Kind of villages?
We have second major town, which is Baucau.
Oh, okay.
And but the rest of Timor and other districts is still a long way to be developed. Yeah.
And well, I mean, when you plan to go back next, is it sort of a emotional trip or fact-finding? You're going to do something else?
I really need to go back as a tourist for once, for a change. Because every time I go to Timor was all about doing some kind of projects.
Indeed.
Yes.
So if you went to Timor as a tourist, which you're going to do when you can.
Yeah.
Well, where are you going to go? What are the hot tourist destinations of Timor, as it were?
Yes, I want to go now.
There's mountains there, for example.
There's mountains.
We have and waterfalls.
We have now. Timor is such a beautiful country.
Wow.
It's such a beautiful. We have mountains and you name it. It's so pristine. And still virgin for for that industry. And
so a feeling of being close to nature, away from built-up areas.
Well, when you're in Dili, it's really full on. You don't really notice that you're so far away from home. But if you step out of Dili, 5 minutes outside of Dili, then you realize that you are so far away from home because it's different.
So different.
Yeah. Then you realize you're in Timor.
Okay, Gil. Look, fascinating. We're going to continue this after the next break. Thanks. Keep watching because we'll find out more about Gil and East Timor and Melbourne after the break.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
Hi, this is Darren McAlane from Air FM Drive. Join me from 3 to 6 p.m. every afternoon on 88.0 in Penrith, and also you can catch me on tunein.com. That's from 3 to 6 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time.
Playing the 80s on Air FM 88.0.
Are you playing renovation roulette? I'm John Jarrett.
Now I know that deadly asbestos lies hidden in 1/3 of Aussie homes.
It can be found in any home built or renovated before 1987. Lurking in walls, under floor covering, behind tiles, in roofing. Asbestos. It was used everywhere. So if you're a renovator or a tradie, you could be risking your life and the lives of others. Remember, go slow. Asbestos, it's a no-go. Visit asbestosawareness.com.au to learn what you need to know.
We reckon one of the most powerful things in the world is this sausage. Because a sausage can do just about anything. It helps people to walk, see and hear, supports families after fire, drought and flood, and even helps plant trees in our community. Our sausages are working to cure cancer, helping farmers in tough times, and connecting people who are new to a community. And at the same time that they're doing all that, they're nurturing the leaders of tomorrow while building friendships that last a lifetime. Yep, these humble sausages are more powerful than you can believe. They're working wonders in our community. And at Lions, so can you. Lions Australia, we serve more than sausages.
If you were living on the streets, wouldn't you want more than just your best friend to keep you safe and warm? Donate to Backpack Bed for Homeless and give warm, waterproof protection and dignity tonight. Call 1300 OzHelp.
Welcome back. We're talking to Gil Santos about his plans for a holiday in his original country of Timor. But we talked a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm.
One of the big industries, is it not oil? Is there not a lot of oil in the Timor Sea? And are there some issues around that?
Yes, we do have oil, and oil is our main source of revenue.
Okay.
And then our second biggest export at the moment is coffee, which is, but what concern most of us about the oil revenue is the government at the moment is not looking into ways how to generate revenues from other industries. Oil is, they just get the money and giving them out, just paying the expenses, but not looking into how to generate revenue or make
and get
money.
Extra value out of having
Yes.
the oil rather than
Yes.
just
Yes.
pulling it out and selling it.
Yep, and one thing that I'm not really in favor is the government trying to have mega projects, but
Mega projects?
Yes.
Okay.
And instead, I still prefer that the country should look into basics necessity like health, education, in order to build the human resources.
Yes.
And
more organic growth, slower
yes.
growth.
Yes.
So what these mega projects,
I mean,
what are they? Are they tourist
they-
things or big refineries or?
They're looking into the tourist things,
Yeah.
and as well as or maybe the pressure, and like every other governments in the world, they only have short-term,
Yes.
5 years term to
Wow.
to do. They never look into the long-term. If we talk about health and education is a long-term goal, but this is something that they're never interested in.
Oh,
So,
I see. It's all just so much. It's just
Yes.
like an independent country, only 20 years really, for only 20, 30 years. 20 years. And, so much to do, so many
Yes,
pressures. Of course, problems with neighbours. But oil gives a country a chance to plan well into the future. So why
Yes.
such short-term planning?
And that's one of the issues that's a lot of debates going on, which is good, and we do have a lot of debates surrounding the oil revenues and all that. Yeah.
What's the population of East Timor?
We just 1 million.
Wow.
Just a little bit over 1 million, and more than half of the population kids under 15.
Now, does everyone talk how many languages? Do they talk Portuguese?
Well, Portuguese and Tetum is our official language.
Okay.
And then we do have another 30 odd dialects.
Wow.
And then people also people speak in Indonesian as well.
Yes, of course. You
Yes,
have to.
yeah.
They're across the border.
Yeah. So the language sometimes is an issue when the politicians try to politicize the language.
Oh.
And which has caused a bit of problems. But for me, these issues should be left to academics to decide, what's best for
Gil,
us.
really, you're the perfect person to ask. And what more can be done in Australia, Melbourne, Australia? I mean, Australia is contributing something good, hey, towards this.
We in Australia, we do have friendship cities going on from all the districts. Like, for example, where I live, Casey, we have friendships with Ermera.
With who?
With Ermera, another district.
Okay.
Yes. And they build schools, they do all the basic necessities, and which is very, very positive. And our community here also is very active. And I also involved with METAC, Melbourne East Timorese Activity Centre.
East Timorese Activity Centre.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we based in Richmond, and we have dinner every month.
Oh.
First Friday of every month. So we anyone that always support Timor, like
wonderful.
yourself.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to come.
Yeah, just come and there's food and music
and meet some East Timorese
East Timorese
people in here in Melbourne.
Yes.
And it sounds like you'd like to spend quite a lot of that oil income on education, hey?
Yes.
Yeah.
Education is everything.
Yes.
I mean, we can't build a country
and not just academic education, but like commerce and, you know.
Well, I always argue human resources is not about sending kids to university.
Yes.
Human resources is about keep the population healthy.
Yes.
That's another thing. I mean, if one day, we live in a very competitive world, and we need to, like, for example, invest in the health sector where people are healthy to involve with economic development. And when half of the population is half sick with mental problems, it's very, very, it's tough to build a country in that basis.
Of course, and a country which has got its own geographic limitations and, you know.
Yeah.
But someone has to do it, and you're one of the people who's doing it here in Melbourne. And there's more that we could do by perhaps attending or getting involved or, you know, finding out more.
All the city councils here in Australia and have some relations with other districts in Timor. So,
I see.
Yeah, we do based on a people and people relationship.
All right, then.
Which is going very positive
so
at the
people
moment.
can get involved in helping East Timor through their council?
Through the council, yes.
You've done some excellent work. Not you personally, but all your team around you. How big is the East Timorese community in Melbourne?
Well, outside of Timor and Indonesia, Melbourne is the biggest Timorese community outside of Timor.
Wow. Well, we're lucky here in Melbourne.
Yeah.
We really are to have such diversity. And you see a role in the future for Australia to continue to forge better relations with the East Timorese.
Well, that's very, very important. Bilateral relationship is...
and you're an Australian now.
Yeah.
So kind of a... You know, it's funny, you know, people can say we can have dual citizenship, but really the proximity and the nearness... We all need to learn about our neighbours more, hey?
Yes, the relationship between Australian people and Timorese people has gone back a long way since the Second World War. So now with this friendship city that's going on, we strengthened more of that relationship.
A fabulous story, Gil. Thank you very much for joining us here on Channel 31 Migration Stories. And by the way, if you'd like to enjoy some of Gil's band Dilly All Stars music, it's on ABC Music, you can find it there and elsewhere. And please do stay in touch with this show and find out more about the East Timorese community through the councils. In the meantime, keep watching Channel 31 and we welcome you back next week.
There's a difference between forgetting something once and forgetting it many times. There's a difference between forgetfulness and dementia. Talk to someone who understands. Call the National Dementia Helpline on 1800 100 500.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Alleluia. Om Mani Padme. Om Allah.
You're watching Harmony and Diversity. Norm Curry is my name, and I'm speaking today with Peter Westmore, who's the National President of the National Civic Council. In fact, we've had 2 previous interviews with Peter, and we're following along those themes. What we need to be looking at in the first instance is a background to what's called the primacies of the National Civic Council. And last week we covered several of those. But a very important one is actually Judeo-Christian values, Peter. If you'll permit me, I'll just read what it says in your primacies here. Judeo-Christian values which provide the cement to hold our society together in opposition to the prevailing view which rejects the concept of common good and makes the difference simply between right and wrong, truth and falsehood, as a matter of personal preference only, rather than objective reality. Judeo-Christian values. What sort of values are we talking about there? What's the common ground between the Judeo and the Christian values? Is it the 10 Commandments, or is it something broader than that?
That's a very fascinating question, and in a sense, I guess what we're trying to describe is an idea which a professor of philosophy, who by the way was an atheist, Professor David Armstrong at Sydney University, whom I knew very well, and David once said to me, societies are held together either by force or by consent. Mm-hmm. And it struck me at the time a very powerful observation. Now, the consent on which our society is held together, which means the way that we treat each other, not just the fact that we've got a police force which enforces a whole set of laws, but the way we treat each other. As to whether when you say to me, I will do such and such, that I can be confident that you will do such and such. Mm-hmm. That I can trust other people with whom I'm in business or who are my friends and so on. This goes to the foundations of what really makes society works, in my view. It is consent. It is a sense in which people work with, respect and trust each other. And I believe that this actually comes really through the Christian foundations on which most people in our society were brought up, and the set of values which they have, which include this idea that we should all treat each other properly, that we should respect other people, that we should be honest in our dealings. And these are not things, by the way, which can be written into any law. So this is the foundation that I'm speaking about. And my view is that these come from the Judeo-Christian foundations of our society. The fact that we are the product of probably 3,000 years of consistent teachings as to how we should treat our neighbour, our fellow man. And I think that one of the central points which comes through in this, and certainly at the very core of what Jesus taught his disciples, was what he said to his disciples after he'd risen from the dead. And almost the last thing he said to them, he said, I leave you one commandment, love one another as I have loved you. Now that is, I think, almost the highest expression of the Jewish and of the Christian tradition.
Yes.
And to the extent that that has had a positive influence on society, it's because it has followed through those principles and foundations on which a society works.
Yeah, that's a very interesting take on that. Just a bit of a curly one in the sense that the Judeo-Christian religions are Abrahamic based.
Yes.
There is another one which looms up, which is Islam, of course, which is also Abrahamic.
Yes.
Is there any potential, or is it explored the potential to maybe include a perspective from that religion as well?
Well, firstly, I think that all people, yes, and I would go even beyond that and say that there are many people who don't necessarily belong to or regard themselves as being part of the Judeo-Christian tradition, not necessarily members of any organised church, who nonetheless share those fundamental values. And certainly people of the Islamic faith, in my view, do overwhelmingly share those values, particularly those who have come to Australia to live, because they've come here to live because they want to be able to live in peace. And I think we have to encourage them to become fully Australian if they're not sort of fully Australian, and also to uphold the same value system which we have. And by the way, when people come to Australia, implicitly they are accepting that that is the basis on which they would live within the country in which they're coming. So I think we have to welcome people of the Islamic faith into Australia. It's only a relatively small proportion of the population in Australia, but it's one which I would hope is able to play an increasing role as time goes on. And I certainly see no incompatibility between people of the Islamic faith and those of the Jewish or Christian faith.
You just gave me a cue there. You said as time goes on. Well, time goes off at the present time, so we'll go for a break. We'll be back after this break.
Hush, little baby, don't you cry. Daddy's gonna sing you a lullaby. When you're sleeping safe and sound, you've got the proudest dad in town. I remember when I first saw you, your heart beating as you grew. We'll read you stories to help you dream. Your mommy and I are a perfect team. I can't wait to hear you sing or watch as you put on a wedding ring. One day you'll have children too. Remember the times I sang to you.
Locals here made the shocking discovery this morning
police have sealed off the entire beach.
There is a killer. One of the worst killers in Australia. Skin cancer. Every year, skin cancer kills over 1,700 Australians. Don't be a victim. This summer, protect yourself against skin cancer.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and my guest today is Peter Westmore, National President of the National Civic Council. Peter, we've been talking about some background stuff with the National Civic Council. I'd like to address some of the current activities you're involved in. I have this brochure here called Making the Internet Safe. Australian Family Association, the council's involved with that. Is that not right?
Yes, well, the National Civic Council was involved in helping to set up the Australian Family Association over 20 years ago to attempt to put the family into the centre of public debate in terms of taxation policy and so on. Right. So this is one important aspect of the Australian Family Association's work and the National Civic Councils, because we are conscious of the fact that the internet, which is just a wonderful resource in terms of being able to give us access to information almost instantaneously, and people who use Skype and other things are able to sort of video conference and so on with people on the other side of the world, which is great. But there is also a dark side to this, which we have to recognise, and which arises from the fact that that particularly the pornography industry has seen this as a means of propagating pornography, and I think from their point of view, making money right round the world. It's a vast industry, and the internet is the means by which this industry is sustained and has also grown. And I think it contributes substantially to unhappiness of many individuals in society. I think the problem of addiction to pornography, particularly internet pornography, is an represented problem in our society.
Okay. So this, the Making Internet Safe, is this directed towards creating technology or giving advice or creating awareness?
Yeah,
in families?
I think the starting point is awareness.
Yes.
Because the truth is, pornography is, through the internet is instantly available, and differently from pornography of a previous generation, which a person could acquire by going to a certain bookstore or something like that. This is all available in the home, and so it's also available with very few controls to children, including even young children. And so the effect of exposure to pornography, in my view, is corrosive. And I say that having seen it from my time at university, where it was used to desensitise young people as they're moving towards and into adulthood, I think with damaging consequences, but particularly with children, where it has the effect of removing from children, in a sense, their innocence, and also of invading their privacy in a way which is potentially very damaging to them.
Yes.
And I think that firstly we have to increase the level of awareness of this problem in our society. Secondly, I think we're entitled to say to the large internet service providers, this is a social problem, and that you, as people who are providing this important infrastructure, have to recognise that it's a social problem. And it's a matter of regret to me that some internet service providers are also companies which host pornographic websites. And we have tried, by lobbying companies, to say to them, this is antisocial.
Yes.
This is damaging our society. Please don't host pornography. Now, the answer that they give us is, well, if we don't, they'll just go overseas and do it. And we know that that is true, but nonetheless, we think it's an exercise in corporate responsibility, that companies which are themselves say that they will act ethically, protect the people within the country from exposure to this material. Now, we know that that's not the total problem, and so we have encourage parents to basically use filters and filtering software, and we also encourage the government, and have encouraged successive governments, to proceed with trials of filtering software to try to reduce the availability of hardcore pornography through the internet. Now, both the major parties have expressed an interest in it, but actually neither of them has yet done it. But we think this is an important issue, and it will be an increasingly important issue as the technology continues to become even more readily available. So it's an ongoing issue in our society.
Yes, I just picked up your list of objectives here to see whether there's any reference in there to actually mores, social mores or family mores. Do you have any pathway to that, in the sense that this is at one end, this is at the user end?
Yes.
Are you doing anything to remove the need to use it from a mores point of view within a family? Sexual awareness.
Sure. This is a good question, and we're certainly not doing as much as I think we should be doing in that respect. What we have tried to do in regard to, particularly in regard to families, is to encourage, and bodies such as the forthcoming World Congress of Families will be partly devoted to this, to trying to empower parents in how they can interact with their children so that they are creating a better sort of a sense of parental role and parental responsibility and parental leadership for children.
Yes.
So we're not just talking about negation. We're not talking about banning stuff. We're talking about trying to empower parents to take control. And we're also trying to empower adults. Take control. Don't allow this yourself to be trapped into this morass, which is what it is. Yes.
Now I'm going to take control, because we've come to our break. I was looking for those key words. We'll be back in just a moment.
We've all seen this one time or another. We may even have done it ourselves. But inhaling balloon gas is very dangerous and can be fatal. The helium in balloon gas acts as an asphyxiant, and when you inhale, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. Balloon gas is safe in balloons and when you release it in a well-ventilated area and in a safe manner. So the next time you see some sucker about to inhale balloon gas, or you think it's going to be a laugh, stop and be gas-wise.
Hot water storage tanks can be a breeding ground for Legionnaire's disease bacteria. You can catch Legionnaire's disease by inhaling small droplets of infected water during showers or other activities. To prevent this from happening, you should never reduce the temperature setting. Tank temperature should be left as set by your plumber. Or eliminate the problem completely with a tankless gas hot water system. For more information, visit healthyhotwater.com.au.
This bank is helping to save lives. Every year, 500,000 Victorians have no idea where their next meal is coming from. Food Bank Victoria works with farmers, supermarkets and manufacturers to make sure their surplus stock ends up here, to be distributed to those in need. But all of this is not enough. Right now, this bank needs interest, your interest, to support Victorians in need. If you can help, visit foodbankvictoria.org.au.
It's always been my dream to represent Australia in the Olympics. Epilepsy affects nearly 250,000 Australians. Like me, most people have their seizures controlled with medication. Even today, people with epilepsy face incredible discrimination, but this prejudice is just another obstacle we can overcome. We're just as capable as anyone else, and often we have to be stronger. I promise I'll do my best for Australia. Will you do your best for me?
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and today I'm speaking with Peter Westmore, who is the National President of the National Civic Council. We've addressed family in quite a lot of nuances, Peter, thus far. And may I just read from the primacies? You've got a list of things that you believe, and these are family support, which is the restoring of meaningful economic support for families; parental roles, recognition of the roles and responsibility of parents; and children, the support for policies which recognise the importance of children and enhance their well-being. There's a Congress on, the Congress of Families. I think it's in May, isn't it?
Yes.
Can you give us some background as that, because the council's involved in that, isn't it?
Yes, yes. Well, it was one of the senior officers of the Australian Family Association, a lady named Mary Louise Fowler, who originally got the idea that we, in conjunction with other pro-family and also some religious organisations, decided that we would try to conduct a World Congress of Families similar to those which have been held in a number of European countries over the last 10 or 12 years, to try to run one in Australia. And the Congress, which will be held in Sydney in May, will be addressing the issues of how do we support the family, recognition of the family as being vital to the success, to the prosperity, including the economic prosperity, to the stability of our society and to the happiness of people within our society. Also recognition that the family is very different from the rest of our society, which operates on the principle that people pay for things. When we go into a shop, we pay for goods and so on. But in the family, all of the transfers which are taking place are actually taking place around love. That's what parents are doing for their children. They will do almost anything for their children. And the family structure is really very interesting, just looked at from that point of view. It doesn't work on the economic principles that the rest of society does. It works on altruism, on the idea of people cooperating with other people, whether there's a payment or not, and of this principle of, in a sense, unconditional love.
Yes.
And we want to say this is vital for the future of our country. And there are so many different aspects of this which are raised, which need to be sort of both teased out, but also in a discussion of, we hope, a couple of thousand people from all around Australia and from overseas to talk about what strategies can be used to address the challenges which families face today. And we spoke earlier about the problem of the internet, for example. Well, this is an area where it is really important that families, parents, be empowered to take control of the television set, to take control of even of computers at home, to make sure that they are sort of used positively. And we have sessions in the Congress which will be, in a sense, of people with expertise in those areas helping parents to play that type of a role within the family structure itself.
And very important, because bullying and youth suicides, there's been a large number of those arising out of bullying through that media.
Yes. Yes.
So it's worthwhile bringing some controls in on that.
Well, it's very important that, firstly, that we have to try and empower people to know there are solutions to these problems. And there are a whole range of issues, including sort of mental health issues, which are arising from, in a sense, the problems particularly that young people are facing today. You mentioned sort of youth suicide. We've got a range of health disorders which seem to affect particularly young people, and our view is that the family is vital to address those problems. We cannot simply say that is a mental health problem.
No.
It is, in part at least, a family problem. And to help to solve them, you can't simply rely upon doctors and medical professionals. We want families to have an important role in that. And this Congress is going also to address those issues. So it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's a very important opportunity for people to discuss how best we can move forward to strengthen the institution of the family, to empower parents, and also to ensure that children are properly protected. And that's what we want to do.
We only have a brief time, but I wouldn't like us to finish the interview without addressing the free-to-believe process of defending our religious freedoms, particularly where we're talking about the Judeo-Christian model, etc.
Yes.
Free-to-believe, what's the background to that?
Well, the background is there have been sort of laws introduced in Victoria which are laws which are anti-discrimination laws, which have the laudable purpose of protecting people who are vulnerable to exploitation. So my position is anti-discrimination laws have got an important place in our society. We do not want to see a society in which people are unjustly discriminated against. There are, however, situations, and particularly in relation to the functioning of religious organisations, where people who have strong and sincerely held religious beliefs should be able to practice those beliefs, and to practice those beliefs even though it might look superficially as if they are sort of discriminating against other people. And the reason why I say is superficially is because there have been a number of court cases in which Christian organisations have been on the receiving end of really very strong criticisms which arise from the fact that people are simply acting out their own religious beliefs, and we have to protect those in society.
And that's totally laudable, and we're acting out our religious belief that time will always end. Peter, thank you so much for these 3 interviews. It's been most informative.
I'm delighted to have had the opportunity. Thanks very much indeed, Norm. Thank you.
You've been watching Harmony and Diversity, and we'll be back with you next week.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu
If a man's home is his castle, his shed is his kingdom. It's a place men can hang out with a few mates, build a few things, even if you haven't before, and give back to the community. No man should be without a shed. The Australian Men's Shed Association is working to provide a shed for all Australian men, and they have over 400 already. Visit your local shed, build your community, and make a difference. Find a shed near you. It's time to give back.
Every time we buy certified organic, we're making a choice to help our environment and build a healthier community. But it can be hard to know that what we're buying is truly organic. The Australian Certified Organic logo is only given to products after a very rigorous process. So when you see this logo, it means you can trust that there are no genetically modified foods, no animal cruelty, and no harsh synthetic pesticides used. A healthier community is always better for our future. So the next time you shop, look for this logo.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
This is called You Say. You say that you have names for all my looks, an inventory of expressions filed and catalogued. I cannot match this keen skill in elucidation. When you look at me, I have more questions than clarity. You watch me with something that is not appraisal, for it is far less detached. It is not adoration, for it is certainly less idolatry. It is not amusement, it is weightier than that. It is not riveted contemplation, the scrutiny is lighter and less affixed. It is not simply fondness, there is more fire there. It is not needfulness, however, a self-possessedness persists. And it is not a lack of what to say or a having said too much. It is the look that you gave me in the laundromat before you said that I was beautiful. The look that you gave me in your car, windows fogged up by conversation on a cold day, as I made paw prints with my toes upon the glass. You say that you shall never forget the feel of running your hand waist to hip over my curves, this indelible addition to sense memory, stored such it is infinite, yet you say it with a sadness, with a sense I am gone already. You close your eyes, sure when you open them I will be. I see it in the tightness beside the flaring of your nostrils as you breathe me into you one last time.
I went looking for the poems he wrote me. Manuscripts folded in two, the paper softened over years, 20 years. But I couldn't find them. It was as if they decided to leave, as if the ether took them and left none of him with me. I turned my memory inside out. I sifted my losses and the dross, and I found a piece of moonstone, round as a pool, with ripples like milk and cream, churned and bleached, plastic fallen from the mould, with a dull tinkle. When I was 6, it was precious. I kept it forever, my portion of the moon. Precious as kindness.
And this is an old one, it's called What If. I found myself running in front of cars again, playing hopscotch on tram tracks. I don't have a death wish, just a curiosity of what if I seem to have renewed without knowing. And it all comes down to the fact that I've found myself hard on sleeve again, cheeks flushed, stumbling over words again. I called you drunk last night, and surely that in itself was suicide. But I'm still alive, so what if? Thank you.
This one was called 5 Questions from a Child, but I renamed it 5 Questions from a Child to Mom because I like the sound of it better. Hey! Ma! 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 If you are what you eat, what happens to the cannibals, Ma? If the clothes maketh the man, what happens when he takes them off, Ma? If I rub Ephraim on my face, Can I catch his Tourette syndrome, Ma? If you can tell a lot about a man by his shoes, and you can tell a lot about a man by the way he treats his mother, what happens if he kicks his mother while wearing nice shoes, Ma? And Dad cheats when we play Monopoly. He says that since he bought the game, he wins automatically. This is not a question, this is a complaint.
As most of you know, a bunch of young poets and some not so young poets have been putting together the Babel Slam, which was running for years and years and years on Brunswick Street. And we've brought it back, and every month we have a theme. And last month's theme was Frankston. Don't ask me why. The crowd yelled it out the month before. And I had to write a piece in celebration of Frankston, which was my hometown. So this is my piece for Frankston. I may not remember all of it. An ode to the Frankston foreshore, where Denham meets the bay. Your needleish beaches are strewn with passionate teenagers, while the cars on your Oliver's Hill sway with sinful copulation. Their yellowed headlights glaring out to Melbourne, mocking as they rock like crouching sex tigers. Oh, Frankston, your streets are long and paved with bourbon cans. Your women, tattooed harpies shrieking, "Fuck off, Nick, I look hot in this. And if that slut ex-girlfriend of yours gives me any shit tonight, I'm going to kick her in the cunt." Verbatim as heard outside the 21st century. Oh, Frankston, you beautiful summer resort. Your backstreet thugs, they're all tanned right up to the teeth. Oh, you've worked hard, Franger, to clean yourself up. A full 50% of your shops now have real glass front windows. None of this corrugated iron wash. Frankston, your streets fairly thrum with the hum of bass speakers strapped into the back of a 98 Celica. 4 boys in the back, 3 boys in the front, spitting in time to your rave-crazy heartbeats. They like the way you keep your alleys dark. They like the ease of scoring pills in car parks. They like that rotating dance floor where they circle like sharks. But most of all, they like the way you move. Frankston, your McDonald's car park is more cultured and central than your cultural centre. But I don't mind, though, because I remember becoming a man around you, pulling bucket bongs in the chipped sink of a motel room we rented for a mate's 17th, until we greened out to the shade of pool table felt, and how we rolled around that room bumping each other, pocketing ourselves in chairs and empty bathtubs, until in sickness we picked our way up to the servo. Man, I remember your poetry, the first that spoke to me, a flash and a flurry of word imagery, pop-top scrawled on brick walls for all to see, and when I saw it I believed that Macca loves cock. Take me back, Frankston. Take me back to the crossroads of Davies and the Grand and Kittens. Take me back in time for 2 Pint Tuesday at Flanny's. I'll drink with you. You know, I'll drink you all in. And when the night closes down and I'm full to the brim, ears leaking Johnny Diesel, beers flowing from my mouth, I know you'll be there with your strong hands to hold back my hair and call me a fag.
I'm able to dream, I'm able to smile, I'm able to grow, and I'll go the extra mile, one day at a time. So put your hands together, we can change lives forever. Together, we're able.
Able Australia. Together, we're able.
Hi, I'm Lane Beachley. Australians have recycled enough printer cartridges to cover Bondi Beach 12 times. That's kept 11,000 tonnes of valuable resources out of landfill. Drop your used original cartridges into the special boxes at participating retail outlets, and they'll be turned into new products from pens to road surfaces. Help us keep up the good work. Find out more at cartridges.planetark.org.
Most of us experience life's ups and downs, but we can always appreciate the finer details that make life worth living. But for 1 in 5 of us, mental illness can make us lose sight of the big picture. That's when Paran Mission can lend a helping hand. We've been caring for the community for over 60 years, finding a place for people, with no place. Show your support and stand up for mental illness. Visit our website and make a donation today.
Every minute.
Every hour.
Every mother and father.
Every sister and brother.
Every son and every daughter.
Everyone you see.
Everyone you cheer.
Everyone you watch.
And everyone you hear.
Everyone you meet.
Everyone you know.
Everyone you love.
Everyone is affected.
Reach out and get connected.
And this is a poem from When Mum Was Sick. This is Soup of Words. We enter now the quiet places, the long corridors, the soup of words. The second test, probably nothing. The phone call, the positive find so negative. The needle aspiration rendering the body airless. The biopsy, the surgery, the amassment removed and no comfort anymore in things solid. And the skin turns bluish to yellow to pink, a rainbow backwards. And now the fear of too tight T-shirts, of overtaxing lymph nodes, extracted, phantom. The saline fluid, then chemotherapy drugs, first one orange, then one clear into the veins. The soft leather chairs, a false, incongruous luxury. The woman to your right, bescarved, hairless, more a truth. And the nausea, suppressed by tablets, but still the feeling rising, the body in revolt. And imagining the white blood cells fighting in depleted numbers, brave, and again the cycling of these fluids, first one orange, then one clear, into the veins. We enter now the quiet places, the long corridors, the soup of words. Thank you very much.
Home late again, and you, afraid of the dark, cling to the light of the television as it holds back all the space in that house. Cast iron rafters, the bare brick walls, some fish in circles. On the hill, a rare grey afternoon, we sat above the harbour around the ankles of that town, our 3 spines to the monument, our 6 knees to our chins. And we finally turned our back on him. Then, you, me, he watching as the hill swallowed us feet first as we went. Then the threat and your call to safety, and me left behind. I dipped my toe into the black of the downstairs, then waded, then swam.
Things to remember when waging war. Try not to kill too many Belgians. Never attack through the same forest twice. Always be inventive when naming secret weapons, and do not put a fat man in charge of an air force. Gas should be used only in chambers. Having a big gun is not a sign of fertility. If you spend a lot of money, you must use the weapon it paid for. No matter what day it is, it'll never be over by Christmas. Johnny will always come marching home on crutches, and you can only speak softly if you're the one carrying the tank division.
There is a couple on my tram tonight. They are known to me not as names but as faces I see regularly in my travels. They sit as they always do, he on her right, she, well, on his left. They never smile. They appear a little alternative. His hair is pretty much as long as hers. He reads from music magazines and Rolling Stone, guitar. She never speaks unless to respond to his occasional sight of mouth-muted comments. They don't hold hands. They are moving now on this near-empty tram, looking disgruntled away from the one person sitting near them. They're wearing long scarves, their team's colours flying. I know from the guys back at the bar that their team won tonight. They don't look happy. And now as I walk beneath midnight autumn trees, On the way from the tram to my home, I hope and I wonder that they have beauty somewhere, that maybe they too kick the leaves.
This is plagiarism at its best. It's called With Thanks to Lewis Carroll. It's all a big brouhaha, but I've had a frabjous day, and my borogoves are feeling frumious. Must be all that gambling with the mome raths in the wee small hours. My mimsy hasn't been the same since I went galumphing after a long lunch and some shady and rather uffish character burbled all over me. My guy wasn't too brillig. Anyway, after some slithy tove had been whiffling round it with eyes of flame, which is how you get yourself into such a brouhaha in the first place. I mean, that's what happens when you let someone get all mimsy with you and snicker their vorpal sword right up your bandersnatch.
This is 70s Drive-In. The huge screen embraces our car as its silent movie caresses love-locked hips. And like stars winking in this metal galaxy, it backlights our desire. Smoke signals pout and kiss through open windows. The haze seduces, puffing us towards a teenage nirvana of lust and candy-wrapped Hitchcock in the fog. Intermission, we adjourn to swagger in neon's glow, world-weary from all that sex and death. Buy burgers and hang out with fellow travellers of the flesh, then roll back, gorged and sleepless, to dip fingers into closing credits, change gears, and tune into the home station, drive back to childhood and curfew.
Morning. It's cold in the trenches. Sunrise tastes sunset. You'll open your mouth and breathe, but choke. You will fall and look up and see a bird circling. You will ask the bird how it got there, how it got so high. Ask, is it leaving you? Jumping ship and leaving the earth creatures because it's free. You think it's free because it's so high, but there's more, there's always more, and what's less on the ground, it's escaping what's on the ground. Look down, fly. Look down, bird, you'll pretend not to notice them and fly, but you'll see their mouths contorting, eyes wet and choking, barely breathing because they can't fly. Persisting against distance, cold morning persists. Sunset tastes sunrise and birds will fly. Looking up, you'll persist. Believe that someday you'll fly too, but you'll walk. You'll always only ever walk. Morning in the trenches is cold and you'll persist in morning cold. The bird will say fly and you'll say you can't. But the bird will say, how do you fly? Just don't walk. Don't walk. Distance persists and it's so cold on the ground, so don't walk. And you'll choke on every breath. Choke and keep walking till you choke and cease. Sunset tastes another sunrise over cold morning trenches. Sunrise tastes another sunset. You won't walk and birds will fly.
The thing I love about Australia is our spirit of mateship and togetherness, and whether it's a drought, a flood or a bushfire, when times are tough, Australians stick together. Well, I'll be spending Australia Day at Tamworth with 40,000 country music mates. It brings people together to celebrate our music and our great country.
Get together on Australia Day. Go to australiaday.org.au to find out how.
Had enough of the bad news about carbon dioxide and climate change? Wood is one solution. Trees take CO2 from the air and store it in their wood. They're also renewable, unlike concrete and steel. But the wood you choose should be recycled or from certified plantations or forests. This helps protect areas of high conservation value. So next time you're building or buying something, make it wood and do your world some good.
Here is some brilliant news for adults who have difficulties with spelling, reading a newspaper or phone bill, or writing letters and emails. It can be easier to improve your reading and writing skills than to keep putting it off. Take the plunge. Call the Reading Writing Hotline, 1300 655
1300 655
It could change your life.
Coming up next on MELfeed.video.
Tick, 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 fashion.
Tick, 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 fun.
Tick, 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 food.
Tick, 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 festivals.
All make up 15 fabulous minutes.
In a half-hour special.
Presented to you by Jacqueline and Steve.
Every week.
Coming up next on MELfeed.video.
Time's up.
Happy love poem. Happy love poem. This is called Sometimes. Sometimes I will stand in the hallway to hear you on the phone. Not the words, not who you are speaking to, but the rise and fall of the melody of you. Sometimes, gentling back from a kiss, I witness you leaning in to kiss me once more, and I hurry back to you, eager to miss nothing. Sometimes you are so tired, I put you to bed, and in the instant before pulling bedding over you, my thoughts are flame orange, need to stroke you, and to pale blue damp kiss your warm forehead creaseless. Twin armies, my response to you, constantly charge one another across spaces airless and across light-drenched fields of flowers, and I am air and soil and watch them run. Thank you.
I didn't have an ending to this poem until a couple of weeks back when John uttered the immortal phrase, "Poets make things up." So thank you, John, for finishing it. The poem is titled, "It Never Happened, You Stupid Reader." I never stood in a comet's tail and went through the universe at its inception. I've never made a world of beauty and wonder, nor destroyed a civilization. A town. On a whim. I've never had an epic love which left my heart broken and stranded like a beached whale next to the sea of love. Although a couple of heartaches have had me crying, whimpering, which may have been confused with whale song. I've never been to hell. I've never paid the ferryman money to travel on his boat across the River Styx. I like to believe that angels will sing at my bedside and St. Pete will open his arms wide in welcome, but my life will fade away to a whimper, and I will go to hell. Love has never scorched my heart to leave it as a black, lumpy coal, nor has it lifted me to the heights of heaven. Although it did once lift my back out of a poor and painful ache, I think it was more lust than love, because when she left, there was no whimpering whale songs. I have not died. If I had, I couldn't write this poem. I throw words together. It's not an autobiography. I'm a fucking poet. I make things up. You stupid reader. So.
Faces sealed, but for eyes that soak in what the mind already knows at its margin. Mouths that would speak out aloud that which is beneath the surface of 21st century avowal, but short of the truth that conspires apocalyptic judgments, keeping heads on sticks, enjoying the rules of play. They knock on doors of the known, hopscotch steps to the next destination seen, see charter for ascendancy in shop front windows, souls clinging to small numbers of common bond, never alone, living for the exhilaration of the next encounter with the scale, keeping check, their measures fair, in reverence for hovering powers. I count step by measure of breath, spirals in the weather never ceasing, this window to the outer limits always balanced by despair, each day changing the margins of my hazy focus, to stay alive on this learning curve landscape, my principles within the grasp of uncertainty's hands, obvious roost to the inner minds of pedestrians.
Backyard tennis court. Not an Adidas in sight. Tennis court lights up. Nighttime tennis, get your head around that. Day is so full up, have to play at night. Man, you've never seen such a piercing light. Backyard tennis court. Night vision on. Doubles as a runway. For a flying machine to touch down. I can't get over that shattering light. Here's the thing, I have yet to see anyone playing nighttime tennis. It's off. So what's the point? What is the point?
This one's called My Last Body of Water. I'm leaving this sea tangle now, heading into winnowed pillow, my dream harbour, cornflower blue sheets, shoals finding passage through impossible ebbs, not a spearhead of wind, soft thoughts of the day, fly merry over sea circuit, skimming surface like a seabird, an old skiff coming in from the sea, folding its wings, in need of oyster rest, the sleep of pearl.
This is Woman in 4, and it's for Chris. 1. Accidental baby drops from her womb. She flees, naked and doped, leaving father and child to Cohen's consolations. 2. Found her in body shop, speeding to salvation. Brothel hooks, money's fast. She learns that not all tricks are magic. 3. Needles and fucks, Hep C for lunch. I watch her slip into the vein of junk, nod her way to the valley of absolution. 4. Holy white, holy death, statistic junkie whore. She floated. Toxic beauty. Could never really find the ground. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, I'm going to order some pathology tests to see how everything's going.
Half the Australian population had a pathology test last year. That's you or someone you love. 100 tests are performed every minute, delivering vital medical information. From the moment you are born, your healthcare depends on pathology tests. 70% of medical decisions rely on information from pathology tests. Pathology is the engine room of healthcare. One small sample can reveal millions of insights all about you. Pathologists are your doctor's doctor. 25,000 people work to provide doctors with the answers they need to treat you. Australian pathology is world class. We may never meet you, but we see each of you as part of our family. Every minute, 23 Australians find out more about their health.
Good news, Sarah. The results show that everything's okay.
Pathology provides peace of mind.
I rely on Australian pathology.
Sign up online to support Australian pathology.
Every day, in many ways, the Royal Flying Doctor Service takes the finest care to Australia's furthest corners so that all Australians can enjoy the best of health. The Royal Flying Doctor Service has been taking care of Australians for over 80 years. But we still need your help to continue providing emergency rescue and essential healthcare to remote and rural communities. Make a donation or become a supporter and help keep the Flying Doctor flying.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
20 minutes till showtime. Here we are at Chapel of Chapel for the opening of
Prodigal Son, and things are warming up here in the background, as you can hear, because this is a musical
warming up
for absolutely everybody. Get down here before the 24th of July and you can see it for only $20. It's about how much we cost.
Written by Matthew Frank and Dean Bryant. Stay tuned for a fantastic musical about family problems. With the musical being here at Chapel of Chapel?
Well, it is a fantastic venue. It's a fantastic venue for all sorts of product and programs that we've developed over the 4 years that we've been here. And it just happens to have a wonderful acoustic. And because of that, people who know how to project with the spoken word and singers find it just heaven on a stick, as they say, because it was built as a chapel. And that chapel was acoustically built for the choir. And henceforth, as a choir or as a vocal sound or of any sort or acoustic instrument, it just makes the most beautiful sound. And so it's intimate. We were able to, like tonight, for instance, it's a very exciting night with the Prodigal Son opening, but we've already had a season in the smaller space, and now it's ready to go on to much bigger and better things.
Yes, I want to know where the drinks are. There's actually some goody little bags around here. We'll help ourselves to one of those. What do you get in one of those? Look, hey, show bag. Get your own personalised copy. Yay, that's always a must. And, oh, yeah, your flyer. Now, I see, what brings you guys here tonight?
Because I love musicals and I write myself.
You write yourself?
Yeah, and I'm very, very interested to see what it's like. I've heard wonderful things. Wanted to see it last season. What have I written? I'm in the process of writing a musical myself.
So you're going to be here in about another month then?
No, I moved to Sydney, but I might be back soon.
Why does everybody go to Sydney, I wonder? Okay, we'll just keep moving along. How are you guys this evening?
Well, thanks.
And what brings you here tonight?
Someone in the cast is a friend, and it's a great show. I saw it last time I was here.
Okay, so you're back again, second look, yeah?
Definitely worth seeing again.
So we're just going through the crowd to see who's all here on opening night, who got free tickets. I wonder, oh my God, a celebrity already. 5 paces and we've already got a celebrity. Oh, Pal Ross, so you like a couple of musicals, of course, because you were the angel in that fabulous show, Rent.
Yes, yeah. Oh, actually, have you seen this show?
I haven't actually seen it, no.
Yeah, I've seen it before, and actually I'm very good friends with Matthew Frank, who one of the co-writers, and it's brilliant. So I'm here to support new Australian acts because I know what it's like.
You said it was a fantastic production. What makes it so good? Is it the writing, the lyrics, the actors?
Yeah, I think it's just a combination of the entire thing. Yeah, the writing's great, and the actors are all great as well, and just the fact that it is new, and and you know that somewhere like Chapel of Chapel has given it an opportunity to get people in.
Matthew and Dean, good evening.
Hello. Fine with you.
Now, your claim to fame, you're the writer of this fantastic production tonight.
That's right. I am the book
writer, I the script and the lyrics, and Matthew is the...
I wrote all the music. I'm the composer.
Every single note.
So how long did it take you to write this production?
Well, Matthew thought of the idea in basically a year and a half ago now, and then I took it away and did a bit of a first treatment with it and showed it to Nick Enright, and who wrote The Boy from Oz and Cloud Street.
Oh, right.
And
he pulled it apart, and we put it back together after that.
Basically, so we did the majority of the writing not this summer, the summer before, and then we did a workshop at the Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts in September last year, where we really worked the piece on the floor. And since then, it's basically just been step after step.
Now, this isn't the first time you've actually performed at Chapel Off Chapel.
No.
This is a second showing.
The first time we did it in January and February for the Midsummer Festival, and it was a tremendous hit. And
it was.
Great expense to the management. We're bringing it back. That's right. We sold out and extended the season.
Actually. So.
Can you tell us a little bit about the play itself? What we can expect this evening? What's the nucleus of the event?
Well, it's a family drama. It's sort of a combination of
a family show.
Family show.
Especially at home. Am I meant to be enjoying my family more than I am? Don't get me wrong, it's not like they hold my hand in the blender when they make breadcrumbs. Although I wouldn't put it past Kane. I just feel there has to be more to a home than people who control your life no matter what. People who believe that you're still in your closet. People who address you like a tiny tot. That's my family. People who are in your life on endless days. People who annoy you in unending ways. People whose opinions are right but still amazed. That's my family. Happy family.
Family show.
It's basically like a family that thinks it's perfect, and the son goes away to Sydney, sort of broadens his horizons, deals with, drugs, sexuality, things like that. And when he returns home, the family doesn't quite fit together as well anymore, so they have to reconfigure.
So not only your involvement by writing, do you play in it as well?
You play the piano?
Yeah, I'm the musical director and the pianist, so I hold the whole show together.
And I'm playing the lead role.
Oh, you're playing the lead role?
The son in
so
the title role.
You not even write it, you get the best roles in there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, well you got to write them for yourself.
Yeah. So this comes from personal experience then?
No.
Well, they always say that.
Families, you do cricket sets for Christmas. Happy families, 10 years in a row.
5 in the cast, so what exactly was the criteria for casting? Interesting in that 2 of the cast members are yourselves.
That's right. Well, of course, Dean wanted the lead role, as you do when you write it.
You didn't flip for it?
No.
Well,
Dean can't play the piano, so I had to get that job. And I was in Maine with the production company with Rhonda Birchmore, and 2 of the cast members I just thought were fantastic, so I sort of based the roles on them in a way, the parents, and the other 2 cast members we went to Whopper with, so...
Where's Whopper?
Western Australian Academy of Performing Arts, where we study.
Yeah, drama school, so...
Yeah. So where do you see yourself going from the next step from here? Any more plays coming up?
Yeah, we're working one at the moment actually, about a country family, different this time though.
Into the families we are.
Family thing.
Families. This one's about, we're not really sure yet, but it's basically about a family where the mother dies and the daughter has to make some choices about whether she's going to be the new mother or follow her own.
How dramatic is this play now?
Very.
Dramatic. You'll see.
You get out of here! Get out of here now! I would not go back even if you were dying! Won't go! I would stay! Stop it! This order won't be from here to Sunday! Oh, that's I'm bringing him back! Don't you dare, Celia! You ordering me, Harry! I'm telling you that that person goes back into my house! Is that who he's become? Not so long ago, he was your you heard him? He showed me no respect. He showed him. Well, you look at him. You mean he's made a mistake? That's pretty clear. I'm sure he knows that more than you admit. He is a mistake. Get out of here. I don't want to hear what's so untrue. I'll not hear judgment till it's due. Look how glad you carry your dinner table and chair.
Hi, Jules, the mother of all mothers, the mother of the play. How did you get typecast for this one?
Well, it's quite a challenge for me actually. So it's not typecasting at all.
Challenge? In what sense? Are you not a mother in real life?
I'm barren in real life. Well, not barren, not he's just joking. There's nothing funny about that, really. But I haven't got children. So, do you want to go there?
Yeah, let's
Let's go.
Musical star singers.
I get my chance to live out belonging to a family in this musical and have children who love me and need me, rather than being a single woman alone in the world.
I haven't got my tissues.
I know. So I just love being in this play.
But your son's gay.
Yes, well, that was a disappointment. But there goes the grandchildren, you know. But anyway, no, he's a lovely boy. He was always quite different, quite creative.
And do you enjoy this role?
I do.
Immensely?
I do.
What's your highlight of it?
Well, I guess it's got lots of challenges because of the nature of it being really like a sung play in a sense. So there's really meaty scenes, there's some great singing, and there's lots of comic moments as well. So, and I think it's the audience stuff, without sounding a bit of a wanker. I mean, it is wonderful where you get the audience laughing and crying, and then at the end feeling very satisfied.
Oh, I hate those roller coaster rides.
Doesn't it sound like a cliche?
Oh, you pull
like
everything
that.
out of you, you know. Let's get funny moments out of you, let's get the tears out of you, and so on.
And then everyone comes together at the end.
Come and come see our head. The truck disappears from each bed. Grey skies above us. Clouds drift apart.
Person.
Oh, I see. You want the younger, prettier one, I suppose.
Yeah,
don't you?
get the good-looking ones in now.
Shall I just go now?
Yeah, nick off.
All right, love.
From over
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yes.
Have a top night.
Yeah, you too. Have one for me. Yeah, lovely. Yeah, God, I don't know. And they call that talent. I bet you... Oh.
Look, you've got your skills, you know the fishing routes, you fix the engines, it's good solid stuff. You don't want to be stuck making decisions about loading permits and taxes.
I can gather you're the father of the prodigal son.
This is correct. I am the father, the fishing magnate from, well, he's not really a magnate. He's got a couple of boats in Eden. He has a young son who he wants to take over the business. He has another son as well who works there, but he's not the favourite. And the young one decides not to stay on. And this doesn't please Dad at all.
No, so he was a proud father, and unfortunately things haven't gone quite the way he anticipated.
That's right, yes. The youngest son has gone away to university and also discovered his sexuality there as well.
Did that come as a shock, or did you think the fact that he dressed Barbie dolls as a kid was a bit of a sign?
Oh, there were no Barbie dolls in our house. Okay. No. It was a great shock to the father, of course, and this, as it unfolds in the story itself, his father, or me, my character, has a lot of trouble accepting this.
I've got something to tell you. You're not in trouble, are you? Do you need help? No, nothing like that, but you might find it hard. What? I'm gay. Dad? No. You had girlfriend.
How did you prepare for the role?
It's just life experience. You see these people all the time. When I grew up, most of the parents around were basically just like this guy. He's not a bad guy or anything, he just doesn't understand. The highlight of the play, I guess, is when finally both sons come out and attack Dad for his bullheadedness, his pig-headedness, if you like, his inability to see past himself.
All the shit out of your life. I want you both out of here by the morning.
Mark Zolan, co-producer, The Prodigal Son, congratulations on a fantastic evening's performance.
It's been fantastic. We're very excited. We think it's going to really get a long way now, so it's great. My background is basically in marketing and commercial side of life. I've been in America for 10 years and have been involved in a couple of other productions, one in the West End and The Hobbit recently finished, which was very successful. And we felt that this show really had something to offer a market both all around Australia, and more importantly, it's something that's a little different, it's funny, it's musical, and it's small, and it really reflects Australian culture, which is really rare and really high quality. Yeah. So that's why we loved it.
Come down. It's a fabulous show. Yeah, fabulous.
Very nice quiches.
Very nice quiches. Where'd you get those?
Oh, just whip them up in the break, love.
Oh, okay. The Rotary Club's working really well, mingling through. Little wine here. Little wine. How'd you enjoy the performance?
I loved it. It's my third time. It's fantastic.
Third time?
Yeah, excellent.
So, have you learned anything different from coming back so many times?
Yeah, I love the new revised edition, or whatever you call it. Yeah, fantastic.
So there is a difference between the first?
Just a little bit. More natural, yeah.
More natural?
Yeah.
So how do you sum it up as in like a few words?
Oh, bloody brilliant. Yeah, they've done a great job.
The producer, congratulations, Stacey Testro.
Thank you.
So how did you, this is actually what you want at the end of a performance, no doubt. Everybody's like full of critical acclaim for it. Everybody who's spoken to said it's fantastic. I suppose it's no different to the outcome the first time.
Yeah, except it's a bigger venue and except there's tons more people and the show has sort of moved and changed, and in terms of rewrites there's been a lot of more further development. So it's somewhat a little different, but at the same time it's really exciting and also a privilege to be involved in a new Australian work. Also with a venue like this, there's not many venues that give you the opportunity to be able to showcase an ensemble piece. You either have to go big theatre and it's very, very expensive to do that. So this is an opportunity to have a long run and to let people see it over a long period of time. So it's really great. Very pleased about it.
With regard to putting a performance on, a production on, what sort of support does the government get, or what sort of funding do you tend to need?
Well, our production is privately funded. We haven't specifically gone to... There's not really any particular support from the government at all.
No grants, really?
Not for theatre. There's certain grants that are given throughout the year for certain theatre, but not specific to film and television more than theatre, yeah, which is a shame, actually.
The flatmate of the prodigal son, yes, when he comes to Sydney, but he flees and goes back home after he goes awry.
Tell us about your character, because, I mean, you're wearing nothing.
Well, she's soon to be wearing lots of crazy things. She's a performance artist, so I'm hoping we're not stereotyping her, but she's kind of out there, very kind of conservative on the inside, I think. But she gets to wear fuzzy white vests and these things. I should fight for a
bit like you, really, or not?
Couldn't be fair. I'm such a square. That's why I'm an actor. Get a bit of a life on stage.
How long have you been acting for?
5 years professionally since got out of drama school.
Fantastic.
I think it's 5.
And you sing in this as well?
Yes, yes.
A little splash of yellow makes a brand new sun. A dot of indigo can be the skies. A spot of green creates an effervescent cloud. If you see it in your eyes, a ripple at the edge can be a tidal wave, no matter what the size. Everything can be, depending how you see. If you're looking at your warm and brand new eyes.
Is that something that most actors need to do now? Being an actor alone is not good enough. You have to sing, you have to dance, you have to do everything.
I reckon, yeah, to be competitive, basically there's no work. So if you can be as flexible and do as much as possible, your chances are greater. So yeah, the better you are at everything, the better your chances
And
are.
now, is this your first time here in The Prodigal Son, or were you in the last ones as well?
Original. In fact, the whole cast is the original cast, which is divine, because normally when things get produced after they've been workshops, they get different actors, so it's wonderful.
So it's like getting the old gang back together then?
Absolutely.
And how is everybody going?
We love it. We all get along really well. It's good.
So you're a bit nervous?
I hate it when people ask me that because it makes you go nervous. Sorry.
It's actually kind of good to be nervous before a performance. They say that's good luck. So are you?
Yeah.
You are.
Just got to keep breathing, low breathing.
Because if you make a mistake, I've got it on camera, and you will just stuff up so badly because I'm watching you.
See ya. Fantastic. Here we have some younger people, the youth of today, Generation X, out to see a musical. Do you normally go out to the theatre?
I don't. I do all the time, yeah. So, yeah, and this was really good. So I usually always have something a bit critical to say, but I didn't have anything to say about it, so it made me cry. It was good.
So what made you come along to tonight's performance?
Well, actually, I heard about it through friends, so I heard it was good, so I came.
And what about yourself? Any reason you don't go out to the theatre much?
It's not been a thing. Yeah. I went to the opera once and that was really good.
So what do you think would get you along to the theatre more? Do you think it was cheaper or...?
No, it's not that, just that I don't know about it. Yeah. And so because a friend told me and said come along.
Right.
So yeah.
So did you enjoy tonight's performance?
Yeah. Crying, laughing. Yeah.
I have to tell you though, this is opening night and you don't get champagne every time you go to the theatre. So I'm going to let you down.
Well, that's all my plans gone.
Oh well. We're a bit cosy on this couch and we're joined by the burping and no doubt probably the farting brother of the prodigal son. How are you, Kane?
Great.
How are you, mate? Well, it's like I said last night. Eventually someone was going to knock some sense into him. I only meant to scare him, but they wouldn't stop. You stupid shit! What have you done this time? I just thought they'd rough him up a bit, okay? Well, once they started, I couldn't stop them.
And how you going, Zach?
Gorgeous, thanks.
Okay, we've got a bit of a split personality here, and why is that so?
Who's Zach?
Zach is, I can't remember. Yeah, Zach.
He's the boyfriend.
It's so hard because I've got time on stage, you know, like I know what's coming up, but I can't just...
I hope you better remember it on the night.
Yeah,
you might not come out as Kane or...
Kane is the brother and Zach is the boyfriend. Yeah, of the prodigal son.
And which one in real life did you find it easier to play, Zach or Kane?
You know...
Are you camp by nature?
Yeah, sometimes.
Did you go to football? How did you prepare for the role? Did you go to do really straight things? And then did you go to the market?
I tend to draw from people I know, you know, so...
mannerisms?
Yeah, just mannerisms, personality, the way people think.
But how hard is it to do two characters in one night? Do you might come out and go, oh God, I am the wrong character. Can you ever stuff up like that? What would you do?
I don't know what I would do. I'd
joking.
Probably.
Hey, could you get paid more for two characters than one?
No.
Yeah,
ripped off.
I know, but you know.
And you've got to sing, and you sing right through it. Obviously, there's actually a CD available. There's got about 12 tracks on it.
Yep.
How many songs do you sing?
What, am I in all together? Or
do you sing straight and then you sing gay?
Two straight and 3 gay.
And it sounds the same when you're singing, or
you can't tell accents when people are singing.
Yeah, it all depends how they're singing, but yeah.
Was weird, different. He stood out. Better stay away now. Better stay in Sydney. Better play with all the freaks that he's found. If he comes back, we'll see. Well, it's not a flattery.
Next. You've had enough of me. Okay.
No.
Bye. Go back to who I was.
Oh, I do love an opening night, darling.
We're now joined by Babs, who you probably know as a former Prisoner star. And how did you enjoy the performance tonight?
I enjoyed it enormously. I had no idea what the show was about. I had no idea who was in it. I had no idea who was connected with it. And I thought it was stunning. Absolutely stunning.
So what brought you here then tonight?
Well, a friend. I came with a friend. I'm someone's handbag. But I was so pleased to be here because it's a very important new show. I think anything that is about gay issues is obviously very important, and I think it's very, very well handled. It's dramatic and it's funny. I think musically the show is very strong. It's very, very well performed. The actors, the singing.
Do you see yourself a bit more critical being an actress yourself, obviously starring in, say, shows like Prisoner and so on, that when you go to a performance, do you read it?
I think you try not to be just critical, but I'm sure it's because we think we know something, you know, as soon as you think you know something. But I think we maybe do look at it with a slightly different eye, and I've worked a lot in training with actors and also as a director, so I look at all the kind of elements, and I thought what I saw tonight was really, really exciting. Come and see it, it's fantastic. It's very hard.
Your character in Prisoner wasn't something that you are very like.
No, not at all.
You're really tough and ruthless.
I know.
And you're soft as marshmallow. I mean, really.
Such a marshmallow.
Amazing what a pair of ovals can do, really.
I know. Put a girl in denim and, you know, everything else goes out the window. What can I say?
Would you really have me back after everything?
You still owe me money. So I might get some back if I only did this fucking beauty.
No, it's not so bad here. I'm probably very happy. eventually.
Each week, MELfeed.video presents the CEC Report. The Citizens Electoral Council of Australia presents a weekly program of political and economic analysis with policy solutions which are aimed at saving Australia from economic collapse and also suggest ways in which interested members of the public can assist in their campaigns. The CEC Report, coming up next on MELfeed.video.
I didn't think this could happen in Toowoomba. And then I saw it on TV that night. It really opened my eyes.
Whenever the community comes to us and says we need your help, we do whatever we can to assist.
It is a great feeling to be able to help your neighbours, to be able to help your community.
Each Lions member and each Lions club in different parts of the country, we're totally different. But we have core values that are the same. They remain the same for any Lions member and any Lions club anywhere in not just Australia but around the world.
Anything that you can think of that you want to do and support and help, Lions are doing it right now somewhere in this world.
I think Lions need to tell their story. They need to let people know the amazing things that they do.
The three major streams that we have in Lions are the community service that we do for the public, health and medical research, and the disaster relief.
We're out there to help people. If you love helping people, get out and help them. Join a Lions Club.
We started this project about 20 years ago. All this gear would normally go to the tip. We recycle it and give it to someone less fortunate and where it is needed in the world.
Being a Lion here in Australia means that I can make a difference to my community. But most importantly, it's inspiring other people to get out and be part of their community and make it a safer and a much happier and better place to live.
Childhood cancer, I've always been interested in cancer and small children from the time I first got cancer 30 years ago. Research is an indefinite item. You can't see it, but it helps so much.
I'm here managing the money and the relationships, but other people are out there raising funds and bringing in community support. Without all of us working together, we can't affect change.
2 more extra hands at any function, any working bee, anything we do. 2 more hands can help us raise more funds, can help us serve our community better.
I went to my Lions Club and I said, I got this idea and I think it's a little bit crazy, but I think we could raise some serious money doing it. And it was to run 100 kilometres. And the club said, okay, if you want to do this, whatever you need us to do, we'll be there 100%. And I'm pretty proud to say that together we raised just over $16,000. So we blew the target out of the water, and I think that was due to a lot of the support that I got.
Through my leadership training and all that, I've learned about thinking global, acting local, and Lions Club is definitely that kind of thing. They act within their communities, but the money that they raise can often end up in any corner of the world.
As an individual, I could only do so much, and whilst it was my burning desire to try and help these people, having an organisation such as the Lions family to call upon to support me and those people that were working with me just made it possible for us to achieve so much more.
You know, after the devastation, to come back into the community, you know, you were shattered by what you saw. You know, no police station, no post office, no petrol station, you know, no kindergarten. There was nothing here.
And all that water with an unstoppable.
I don't know that I've ever seen as much as arrived. There were fridges, washing machines, dryers. There was toasters, jugs, just everything.
To be invited to be a part of Lions just opened up a whole new world to me. A world that provided a structured organisation that could see that the hours that I volunteered could achieve so much more.
I think Lions is a wonderful organisation. The people in it have charity in their hearts.
I can go anywhere in this country, see somebody with a Lions badge, walk up to them and say, "Good day, you got a friend."
Never once in my life had I had a group of people where I could go to, say anything, and know that no matter what, they would be there, they would stand by me.
It's the family. That's what we call it's the Lions family. Without Lions, I think I'd be lost now because they've been my life.
We work hard, but the most important thing is we have fun.
The fellowship of all the members of the club, the broader community, it's just a tremendous organisation to belong to. You know, I'll be here till I die.
It is extremely rewarding and gratifying to be a part of an organisation that can spread its support so far and wide.
More members means more hands, means more support to the community.
I would encourage everyone just to give it a go and see if it is for them, because the return that you get for giving to others is amazing.
Get out there, do something wonderful, be part of this fantastic organisation.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Welcome to the CEC Report for the 14th of September 2018. I'm Robert Barwick and I'm joined today by CEC leader Craig Isherwood. Welcome, Craig.
Yeah, thanks, Robbie.
This is a special Global Financial Crisis anniversary episode of the CEC Report because tomorrow, Craig, is the 10th anniversary of the collapse of Lehman Brothers, the Wall Street investment bank which triggered the global meltdown that occurred afterwards. So we're calling this episode of the CEC Report The Australian Banking Crisis of 2008 and Why It's Worse Today. Now before we begin, I've got a couple of announcements to make. First, one of the things we'll discuss here in this episode, as we always do, is Glass-Steagall, the importance of breaking up the banks. And we're going to give more evidence today from 2008 about why it's absolutely necessary. It was the repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1999 that had caused the scale of the problem that melted down in 2008. So we have to get this principle back into the financial system, and as regular viewers will know, the CEC drafted a bill, the Banking System Reform Separation of Banks Bill 2018, that on the 25th of June, Bob Katter and Andrew Wilkie introduced into Parliament. So there's a bill in Parliament now in Australia to break up the banks. And we have to continue to mobilise on that and actually escalate. The campaign of that is important. And the focus of the campaign now is to get it debated. Yes. Because as things stand, Craig, we've got a new Prime Minister, but every utterance he's made since coming in has been continuing his protection of the banks, right? So we can't expect the government to do it. A lot of it's going to come down to the Labor Party. And so as we'll discuss this at the end as well, but viewers, if you aren't already involved, get involved. If you are already involved, do more. continue to contact your members of parliament to demand they debate the Bob Katter bill for separating the banks. This is crucial, right? If we don't get speculation cut out of the financial system that we use, we are all going to, suffer terribly in the next financial crisis, because one will be inevitable. All right. So, and as part of that, this week the CEC in the Australian Alert Service, our weekly publication, there's a copy in here, and we also put out a press release about it, and it's called "Banking Expert Destroys Treasury Arguments Against Glass-Steagall," and this is the refutation that Dr. Wilson Tsai, who's a former principal researcher at APRA, has written in response to the official Treasury letter that's been circulating for 4 years saying we don't need banking separation in Australia. Now, this Treasury letter is packed full of lies. And Wilson.
That's what's stunning about it, Robbie. I mean, it's just so clear cut. I mean, Wilson, of course, was the head of the research division of APRA for APRA for quite a long period of time, so he knows this inside and out. He goes through and nails these liars for what they are.
Yes.
Where they're actually specifically lying. Now, the average punter...
It's point by point he goes through.
The average person, doesn't know where to stand, but he, as a specialist, knows exactly what these lies are, and it's stunning how blatant they are.
And the most important thing about what he's done is this is what Treasury sends to members of parliament.
Yeah.
So you, the viewer, the Australian people, go to their member of parliament and say, you should do something about breaking up the banks. We need Glass-Steagall. They, the good ones, they kick that upstairs and say, they approach the government or the Treasury and say, what about Glass-Steagall? And they get this reply back. And they don't know how to refute it because they're not qualified enough. Wilson Tsai is, and what he's done here is devastating. So get a copy of this if you haven't already got one. You can call in and get a copy of the alert service. Take that to your member of parliament, email it to your member of parliament, insist they read it, insist they give you a response in writing, and insist they support the separation of banks bill. Right? So that's the marching orders for today, and we'll come back to that at the end. Secondly, on the weekend, Craig, we put up on YouTube a video by Denise Brayley of the Banking and Finance Consumer Support Association that she presented to the CEC seminar in Perth on the 30th of June, which you were there for. Now, this is a devastating video, what Denise has done. Denise is the leading expert on mortgage fraud in Australia, and it's called Mortgage Fraud Explained. But what she does is, in exposing this, she's gone far deeper than anything that came out of the Royal Commission. She shows that the system here is rotten to its core. This is the biggest part of banking in Australia, mortgages, and it's riddled with the rottenness of mortgage fraud. She exposes that. And fundamentally what she exposes is if this is defining our economy. There is no way we will not crash as an economy because of how bad this is. I want to play a quick clip of Denise just to give you a sample.
We're going after a Royal Commission that lasts what I asked for in the first place, 2 to 3 years, add the regulators onto it, add the receivers onto it from the business point of view, add the politicians onto it, add whoever needs to be in there to be exposed. Absolutely. Because this is where Australia's at. And what the problem is this, in meetings I've had, yeah, but Denise, if we do that, we'll crash the economy. Well, if we're going to crash the economy, we've got a problem, haven't we?
So that's, and there's 50 minutes of that. Watch it. That's devastating. What Denise is saying is if our financial system is dependent on keeping this financial fraud under the carpet, we have a problem, right? And this, as we'll go through, Craig, is the same problem that caused the global financial crisis in 2008. So this is a very, very important video. If you haven't already seen it, make sure you watch it. It's on if you're a Channel 31 viewer or Channel 44 viewer and you're not watching on YouTube, go to the YouTube channel CEC Australia. You'll see it up there. Watch it and share it widely. I'll go so far as to say this. Do not take out a mortgage without seeing this video first. That's how important it is. Now, normally, Craig, when it comes to the question of mortgages and spruikers and, people are used to getting advice on mortgages, everyone giving them advice has an agenda. That is, they want to sell them something, right? They'll tell you how great it is. Denise Brayley does not have she has no ulterior motive. She doesn't make a cent out of this. She deserves to have made a lot more money. She does everything she does voluntarily. She has everything she knows is from her tireless work defending victims. This is the most impartial voice on this subject in Australia, the most credible voice. Watch it, share it, and make sure your Member of Parliament watches it. Right? This is an incredibly important piece of the picture of the Australian financial system that everyone must know. It's why the Royal Commission must be extended, because it didn't get time to touch on a sliver of it. Really, it was just barely touching the sides. So that's very crucial. Anyway, that said, let's take a break, and when we come back, we will get into the meat and potatoes of the Australian banking crisis of 2008 and why it's worse today.
It's barbie season, so it's time for a barbecue safety check. Clean away any grease build-up. Swap systems assure that the bottle inspection is in date. The bottle should be upright and not hanging by the hose. And make sure your regulator and hose is undamaged, unblocked and unkinked. Check connections using soapy water. When done, turn off clockwise at the bottle first. A quick barbie and gas safety check always means a safe and enjoyable summer.
Behind every great athlete, there is a great support network. Australian Athletes with a Disability and Wheelchair Sports Australia help athletes realise their full potential.
Gonna go from 3, yes!
No matter their ability, we're there to support them. Sporting opportunities for all abilities. For more information, visit sports.org.au.
So, you think you're ready for this?
To take on the world? Why not?
Welcome back to our special Global Financial Crisis Anniversary episode of the CEC Report, the Australian Banking Crisis of 2008 and why it's worse today. Now, what we're about to go through is also a feature in this week's Australian Alert Service. So if you haven't read the Alert Service before, call in for a free copy and you can read the details of what we're going to... So we'll touch on it as well as we can, Craig, in the time we have. But the details are in there. There's two articles that are particularly important, which is one I wrote on page 5. Australia did not avoid the GFC, the Australian banking crisis of 2008. And then there's another article on page 8, financial system more vulnerable than 2008 and we're less prepared.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, that's a phenomenal article, Rob, because it goes through leaders around the world in high places. You know,
well, it gives the international dimension to it.
And gives us that dimension to it, yeah.
All right. Now, let's begin, Craig, by reminiscing about 10 years ago. And I want to play a clip.
Only 10, Robbie? We've got 30.
That's true. That's true. But 10 years ago, everything we said had come to a head. So I want to play a clip of Julia Gillard's reflections on the global financial crisis.
No one 12 months ago was talking about a global financial crisis. Now everybody is talking about a global financial crisis.
So there she is. No one saw this coming, effectively, is what she was trying to say.
Yeah. Well, see, Robbie, that's the complete fraud in itself.
Well, show us the evidence from our standpoint that that's obviously not true.
Let's go back to 2007 before it broke out in earnest. You know, here is a copy of the New Citizen. We're producing hundreds of thousands of these, Robbie.
That's from 12 months before the
12
GFC.
months before the GFC. Financial crisis, financial crash is on, right? And nations must turn to LaRouche. Now, LaRouche is featured here because he is the world's leading physical economist. And I'll say more about that curve that you see there, LaRouche's triple curve function, in a minute, because we've been talking about this, Robbie, since 1994, right?
So that was 12 months earlier.
12 months earlier. Go back another year.
This is 18 months before that.
Yeah. World teeters on brink of financial crash, right? So we were seeing all the markers of a financial crash well before everyone. We weren't just sitting on it. We were publishing these papers to the tune of hundreds of thousands of copies and spreading them around the country.
Warning everyone.
And then you go back again. This is to June 2005. So this is another, 10 months before that. Mother of all bubbles exploding, great derivatives crash, mother of all bubbles exploding, political earthquakes underway.
And specifically there, now all the articles that you've referred to talk about derivatives, which is what melted down in 2008. Yeah. This one was the most explicit, telling people, look, there's a huge problem in the economy, you've got to look at it.
And bear in mind, Robbie, the derivatives total in 2008 was 14 trillion.
Yes.
Today, it's 40 trillion. So nothing's stopped here. But see, Robbie, the reason...
That's Australian derivatives.
The reason we've been able to make these forecasts, you might say, is because of our history with Mr. LaRouche as the world's leading physical economist. And he published in 1994 as a device for people to understand what's happening in the world economy. That device was called his triple curve function. And you see three lines on that triple curve function. The first, of course, is the one that's going through the floor, the physical economic input-outputs. That's what nations produce, Robbie. So you've seen a collapse in physical economic output, the real things that people need, manufactured goods and so forth. But at the same time, you've seen an absolute explosion, a hyperbolic increase in things like derivatives, like we've just talked, and also things like money printing, quantitative easing. And he forecast that this cannot continue, it's going to come to an end.
The original curve, Craig, didn't have those two top curves crossing.
No, they didn't.
That curve was printed because of the fact that in response to the explosion in derivatives, the money printing had started to keep pumping it up.
Absolutely, and this is our history, and it's on our website, Robbie, and there's plenty more to say about this, but I think that's the backdrop. And so this idea that no one could see the financial crisis looming or coming or whatever Julia Gillard was lying about was, in fact, just a straight pure lie.
And it is a lie because it was we're going to talk at length about the cover-up in Australia at the time. So you've made that point adequately, Craig. I'll just cite also, by definition, and we know from the movie The Big Short and the book that I've just finished reading actually, there were actually people in America 3 years before it happened betting it would happen. So there was, if you've seen the movie The Big Short, the character who's played by Christian Bale, Dr. Michael Burry, he said he based his expectation of a crash on two things: the reckless lending by banks, and he distinguished between the lending and the borrowing. He said not the reckless borrowing. Borrowers always tend to be a bit reckless. It's the reckless lending by banks that's the problem, and mortgage fraud. He saw the mortgage fraud, right? And those two predicates are exactly true for Australia today. So that was, i.e. you didn't have to be Einstein to figure it out, though they were a minority, but they did see it. And then this bit, Craig, came out last night on ABC 7:30. And this is quite revealing, again, in the light of what Julia Gillard said, who at the time was the Deputy Prime Minister of Australia. Because she said no one saw it coming. Well, according to Pradeep Philip, who was the Rudd government's policy director, on ABC 7:30 last night, he said that since the beginning of 2008, the Rudd government had been war-gaming a financial disaster. So just have a look at him saying that.
Months earlier, at the start of 2008, the Rudd government was already wargaming disaster scenarios.
What would happen if, for instance, there was a capital strike on the balance of payments against Australia? How would that work through? What would be the consequences? How would you deal with that? We work through scenarios. What if there was sovereign default? The country went bust.
So that's quite revealing, Craig. And it straight away got my attention because this was our issue. We, the CEC, were doing all this work, warning people it was going to happen, and then at the time trying to tell people what was happening. One of the things that we knew was going on at the time was the greatest cover-up of all time, because I'm going to go through what was happening behind the scenes in Australia, but if you lived through it, what you may remember was the constant refrain from the government was Australia's banks are sound. And the consensus to this day is Australia escaped the global financial crisis because of the sound prudential regulation of our banks by APRA and the Rudd government's actions, right? So APRA gets the credit, the Rudd government gets the credit, but fundamentally we weren't threatened really because our banks were sound. So the article that we've written in the Alert Service totally refutes that. Let me just go through briefly the major predicates that you can then read the article for the details. First of all, we know the ultimate issue was a housing bubble, not just in America, in Europe, in Ireland, in Britain, etc. And the bubble was based on reckless lending to people who shouldn't have had, normally the banks wouldn't extend those kind of loans, and those people started defaulting, right? Well, Australia had its own bubble. It was denied, officially everyone denied it. There was no doubt a bubble. By 2008, prices had roughly quadrupled since 2000. And more importantly, the practices of our financial system were similar. So even though, for instance, with something called mortgage securitisation, which is what really encouraged the banks to get into mortgage lending, because they could lend a mortgage and make money from that, and then securitise it and on-sell it and make even more from that, right? We were lagging behind the United States. So by 2008, their securitisation rate on mortgages was 50%, ours was 25%, but ours was growing fast, right? This was the big thing that we were getting into as well. Also, Australia had its own subprime problem, Craig, and it was as big a problem as a percentage of our mortgage market as the United States.
That's the low docs issue.
Low doc and no doc loans. And these were types of mortgages that had, like with subprime, there'd been a basis for coming up with them in the first place. They were for tradies, etc., who don't have the normal pay slips and stuff. And in 2000, they were 1% of all mortgages. But when the banks wanted to go big on mortgages and they ran out of people who could afford to borrow and went to people who couldn't afford to borrow, they exploited these types of low doc, no doc mortgages to justify that, where they could hide a lot of fraud in these things. And by 2008, they were 20% of all mortgages. Well,
20 times.
That's right.
20 times in 8 years.
And that 20% is exactly the same percentage as subprime mortgages were of the US market. So we had the same problem in our system.
And Denise Brady, I think, makes a point now, Robbie, it's up to 80%?
Well, she's talking in general about all. She uses the term subprime more generically, right, to mean anything that's dodgy.
Oh, right.
And so 80%
of dodgy loans.
And she bases that on because she goes and talks to the brokers and say what sort of mortgages are you selling, and they admit to her, look, 80% of what we're selling are interest only, and that's the main category of what she calls subprime in Australia. Yeah, okay. Right? Yeah. So these are all a worry.
Well, even that's just a worry in itself. I mean,
absolutely,
there's no security here.
There's a brewing problem in our system, and that's why we say why it's worse. People may remember interest rates in Australia had been rising until 2008. They'd gone up started going up in 2004. They'd hit more than 7%. There was a lot of defaults going on in Australia on the back of those interest rates. Housing was completely unaffordable. In fact, it cost John Howard the election. The biggest issue in the 2007 election was the cost of living crisis, and that had been driven by the rising interest rates on mortgage debt, right? So prices had started falling. Now, what we now know, we knew this at the time. What we didn't know at the time came out in 2016, and it was reported on ABC, that APRA in 2007 had an internal report had been produced into mortgage lending and the effect of lowered lending standards, i.e. the more reckless lending. And that report said because of the lowered standards, the amount of mortgage debt in Australia is 3.5 times what it would have been otherwise under the older standards, the more conservative standards. So that was identifying a bubble, right? Mm-hmm. And that forecast, look, the way it's going, we're going to have a crash here and we're going to have a recession, right? APRA buried that report to keep that. That's a huge scandal which deserves more attention. Our regulator. Yeah. All right. Also, so these are the things that led up to it. By the time Lehman Brothers crashed in 2008, September 2008, there was a total panic. And the biggest point of the panic here was Australia's banks, to fuel all this lending they were doing, had been borrowing heavily from overseas on short-term terms, 90 days. They had $440 billion in 90-day debt, And the overseas creditors, after Lehman went under, called in $50 billion of that, and our banks were all caught out. And that's what caused more panic than anything else. So let's take a quick break, and we'll continue this after the break.
If you choose to speed,
you could ruin lives.
Someone else's, your family's, or your own.
Choose not to instead.
The right choice could save someone's life.
Proud supporters of safety in our community.
GMCU and Southern Cross Austereo.
Hello. I'd like you to put your hand up to the screen and place it on mine. Now, if you drive when you've been taking drugs and you kill someone, this will be as close as you get to your family for a very long time.
Man to man, it's time to stop.
Stop the tragic waste of life and the destruction of families, including your own.
Stop blaming drugs and alcohol and believing that walking away makes you weak.
Stop thinking you're a hero and wasting your life behind bars, wishing you could take that one moment back.
Stop the coward's punch.
I was diagnosed with Parkinson's at 27.
I was 46.
I was 62.
The first symptom I noticed
was loss of balance.
Was that I was always tired.
Was a loss of smell.
The most difficult thing for me is not to be able to travel in my retirement.
The most difficult thing for me was giving up a career that I loved.
The hardest thing for my mum was being pregnant with me.
Welcome back to the CEC Report, where we're talking about the Australian banking crisis of 2008 and why it's worse today. And I'm going through a series of predicates, Craig, on what actually happened in 2008. So it's September 2008. Our banks have $440 billion they owe overseas on 3-month terms. That means they've got to roll it over every 3 months, and suddenly they can't, and their overseas creditors have called in $50 billion. What ensued was total panic. Now, it came out later, in 2010, The Age got Freedom of Information documents that showed Macquarie Bank hit the panic button first. On the day Lehman went under, they're calling Canberra to raise any contact they could to beg the government to protect them.
Yeah, hang on, Robbie, this is Macquarie Bank. They don't want government intervention.
Oh, yeah, no government intervention for anyone else, but to save their butts, that's what they wanted it.
That's the way it always works, though.
Exactly, of course, because their theories, Craig, are actually lies. It's just hypocrisy. They're looting mechanisms, these banks. All the banks begged the Rudd government for guarantees, and this was revealed by Ross Garnaut, who was the former economics advisor to Bob Hawke, and his co-author David Llewellyn-Smith in a book they wrote called The Great Crash of 2018. And they talk about how the banks went to Rudd, and this is the quote from the book. The banks told Rudd that if the government did not guarantee their foreign debts, they would not be able to roll over the debt as it became due. Some was due immediately, so they would have to begin withdrawing credit from Australian borrowers. They would be insolvent sooner rather than later. That's what the bank said. We're going bankrupt here, right? And that's when the government introduced the guarantees it did, a guarantee on deposits, a guarantee on overseas lending. And I say they did a third guarantee, Craig, which was they tripled the first homeowners grant. And this was a lie. They said when they tripled it, Rudd announced we've got a housing affordability measure. But then another book came out by Lenore Taylor and David Uren called Shitstorm, which revealed that the reason they tripled the first homeowners grant was to get prices up. Prices had fallen. They had to get them up because they were worried what would happen to the market and the banks if we had a housing crash in Australia just like then. But the bottom line is here, in the time I've got left, the point that the reason that they had to do these things, by those measures, they kicked the can down the road. They have made the housing bubble much worse now because of that, right? There was no lessons learned from 2008. Housing debt is more than twice as big as it was then, right?
Yep.
And we are therefore facing a bigger crash now. So, Craig, quickly, why is Glass-Steagall the solution to this?
You've got to take the control of the credit, Robbie, of the financial system out of the private boardrooms of these criminal banking operations, as you've seen with the Royal Commission. What we need is Glass-Steagall legislation which re-regulates the system by separating out the legitimate and necessary commercial banking system from the investment banking and all the investment banking houses, share broking houses, insurance companies, and these totally behemoth, vertically integrated banks that are not acting in the interest of the economy or the people. Now that's what the Glass-Steagall bill that we have in Parliament does. It's a very simple bill, Robbie, because it says the banks can only do this. They shall not
normal
do
lending.
Normal lending. Right?
And what they can't do is speculate.
That's right. It's very simple. Right? The Dodd-Frank bill in the United States said the banks can do this, and they've tried to elaborate that, and it's gone out to 800 pages, right? And
so it's easy to say what they can't do.
When Roosevelt brought the initial Glass-Steagall bill in for the same reasons that we're trying to do it today, that bill was only 34 pages because it was very simple, and it stood for over 60 years and kept the banking system strong. So this idea that we don't need Glass-Steagall, our banks are all strong, they're sound and all that stuff, from Wilson Sires' article you can see that's a complete lie. And it's going to come back and hit the politicians in the head, particularly if we start bringing this up now. And that means that the more honest politicians are going to act. And it's not up to them to act, because they've got all sorts of other political pressures. It's up to us, that is the viewers out there, to grab hold of this material and take it to their MPs.
Exactly. So that's your marching orders. That's what we need you to do. We're out of time. Get a copy of this to read the details. Thanks, Craig. Thanks for tuning in.
Live streamed from Echuca each week, this is MELfeed.video, a different sort of TV.
Australian women need to kiss more. Watch out for persistent and unusual symptoms, as they could be a sign of ovarian cancer. Know the important signs and symptoms. Kiss. Look out for symptoms like abdominal or back pain, difficulty eating or feeling full quickly, or persistent bloating, or a change in toilet habits. If you're experiencing persistent and unusual symptoms for more than 14 days, see a GP. Make sure you kiss regularly.
Imagine not seeing the world you live in. Macular disease is Australia's leading cause of blindness. Donate now to Macular Disease Foundation Australia. Call 1800 111 709 or visit mdfoundation.com.au.
They say there's a chance I could die in a car crash. Maybe even from heart disease. Maybe even skin cancer.
I could die in a work-related accident, or I could die in a fight.
The fact is, the biggest cause of death for men in my age group is suicide.
Please don't let this happen to me.
You can do something. Lifeline believes that suicide is mostly preventable. Help us save lives. Find out what you can do at lifeline.org.au.
MELfeed Video is about to close operations for tonight, but we'll be back with you next Monday evening. In the meantime, here is a selection of programs that will be seen on our next scheduled web stream. You're welcome to visit our website at MELfeed.video for further details of this project. Until next time, from all of us here at MELfeed Video, we wish you a very good night.